Press it.
Boom. And just like that, we are live. Brian, what's going on?
Oh, I was just saying to you before you hit the button that I am officially out of the cupful playoff contention.
How does it feel?
You know,
you gave it your all.
I mean, the odds were pretty high. This was going to happen after I lost 7 weeks in a row.
That's tough to overcome.
Yeah, but then I started really strong and I'm finishing strong. Just that middle part was unforgivable. So anyway, I made it exciting, but that's okay. Honestly, like I can handle it. I barely had the brains. It's like, I sort of deleted the space in my mind where like I cared. It was like, yeah, like I'm still playing and trying, but like it's not. I was getting more intense lately. And
yeah, I guess that's the pro. You could like right now I like don't have a chance obviously for a while, but I've been hoping to like make it to the consolation playoffs. And this week I was winning for a lot of the week, and now it looks like Phil.
Oh, you're gonna lose?
He's having a huge day. He has Shane Goss's bear. So,
you were like, it was like, sorry, Phil, like you were just spoiling.
I know. On the matchup maximizer, I was like, I said I might win
24 hours ago. Not even.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll do my what's the word again? When like not coup d'etat. That's a whole other thing.
About face. Mea culpa.
Mea culpa.
That's what you're looking for.
But thanks to the everyone who's live here. Is Phil Torres the Phil that I'm playing?
Oh,
that would be fun.
I don't think so, actually.
Oh. Okay, well, still a Phil that we like.
Is it? Yeah, he's a St. Louis fan. IRC.
Okay,
I'm
Matt
still in it for
Sogard
a couple madness, by the way.
Okay, good job.
I could advance. I'm just
not that
10
that's
points
cool.
behind Downey.
What's the prize again?
We haven't some swag.
Oh, okay. I haven't. I mean, like also to just like talk about things we're winning and so we can make ourselves feel better. Like I have won my quarterfinals matchup in my dynasty league, going to the semis next week.
Congrats!
So it feels good.
How's your other team doing in the buffalo?
Not that good. Today they had a good day, but I'm still down by like 40.
I mean, if we can,
you guys are good. I don't know who's doing
by
it.
40 in one week, then you can beat us by 40 in another.
I guess so. You guys have I mean, you had such a good games played disparity. It's like you were I think John was like planning this.
John was
for like
really
weeks in advance.
He was super on top of it.
On like Monday, I looked and it was like Monday, Tuesday. You guys had like an 8 game or something, like just over those first 2 days. And I was talking to John, like, John, I just looked. We're so screwed.
And Tyler Sagan was one of those guys.
And he had a huge game.
He really delivered.
Good job. John is like very good. Not like your John. Like my John's also very good, but I think your John is like a savant. Like
yes, he is. Do you know?
We should start. But after this last thing,
Shams and Jeremy are against each other. Are they both missing players on their rosters, or was it just Shams?
I think it was Shams.
I thought there were 2 people. Shams realized he had 2 open roster spots, and he still has like basically the best score of anyone this week.
Well, yeah, it's Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
But
who's worth 3 roster spots? So
Leon Draisaitl also. I mean, those Oilers.
What can
RNH. Jeez. All right, let's get this started. We got a lot.
Schwab, Ashley, Sam. Oh no, are we supposed to remember Schwab Squad's name?
Andrew.
I can tell you what it's not. It's not Andrew.
Matthew. It's Matthew.
It's not Dave.
I was just joking.
It's not Jimmy.
I just had to think of like
not Mo. It's not
Schwab. When I think
Ali
Schwab
Reza.
Squad, nothing comes to me. But when I think blank
Corey.
Schwab, then
Corey
I get
comes to mind.
Well, Corey Schwab. Who was he? That was a goalie, right?
Yeah.
Are you related, Matt? Are you related to Corey Schwab?
Vancouver? Do you play? Where did he? Carolina?
How many Schwabs are there? Right, we have to start. We've got so much. I want to be done one day.
He didn't play with Vancouver or Carolina. Oh, he did play 6 games with Vancouver. See, I knew.
Great.
Charles Schwab. Isn't that a corporation?
Can we start?
Insurance company?
How about I'll just start?
Oh,
we'll see how it goes.
And I just keep making random.
I'll just
comments.
mute your I'll just mute your track.
No, I am like so ready, Elon.
Okay.
Like I'm pumped.
All right. Yeah. The sense got Jacob Chikrin. Yes. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who've got more to cover than Mads Sogard covers the net, because he's very big. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and with me to break down everything that happened in the past week, which is a heck of a lot, and we're going to figure out what are all the fantasy nuggets we need to take to be successful as we're all barreling towards our fantasy playoffs, whether it's the actual championship playoffs, the consolation playoffs, doesn't matter. With me on this journey that we're about to take you on is my very good friend, my IPP MVP, the poobah of prognostication. He has a ton of nicknames. I can't go through them all. We don't have time, but it is the fantasy hockey robot himself, Brian Com. What is up, Brian?
You changed the question again. I think you've got to come in with the same,
I think you can handle it.
Welcome, Brian. I can't. I clearly can't. It's got to be automatic to start, and it's not.
All right. Okay. Next time, just tell me what you want me to say.
The thing you said for like 400 consecutive episodes would be great.
Okay, sure. All right, but here I said, what is up, Brian? I got my first edit point, the only one of the episode.
What is up, Brian?
You say not much. I don't know. A lot. Those are the two options. Or you could go in the middle. You could say like some.
I'm gonna reject the premise of the question. Are you ready?
Okay. Don't be like some corny, like, oh, not much is up the sky. I don't want any of that. Just Let's go.
All right.
Nothing corny.
Elon, it doesn't matter what's up with me. There is so much up elsewhere in the world, but especially the NHL and fantasy hockey, which is what we're going to focus on today. Elon, I thought maybe for the opening joke, you could have gone like more to cover than Mads Sogard's bed sheets, because he's a big guy, unless maybe that's a little too intimate. We don't want to get that comfortable or... Anyway, we're so happy to be here. We have so much to get through on the show today. So many guys wearing different jerseys, which is really the most exciting part of the trade deadline. But the second most exciting part is seeing how they perform in those new jerseys and how people who are already wearing those jerseys are going to be impacted. So we're going to get to it all over the next couple hours. And we are so fortunate and grateful to have you with us, dear listener.
Yes, this is going to be a blast. And when you said players in New Jerseys, I was thinking, well, we're not going to start with Timo Meier. I guess we could. I wanted to wait a little while, get some of his data. That was a little pun there. But Brian, okay. Well, yeah, let's dive into it by first mentioning that we are proudly presented by DobberHockey.com. They are really the best site to be going to this week because you got write-ups on all the trades, you have breakdowns, which players gained value, which players lost value for every trade. And of course, it's not only the players who changed jerseys, it's also the players on the teams where players left and someone gets a new opportunity. I'm looking at you, Eric Bouchard. So, there's a lot to get to. We're going to start with defense, actually, Brian. I want to run through. Actually, I'm going to change the order a little bit. I hope you won't get too mad at me. Now that I just thought of it as we were sitting down, let's just go through all the new Power Play 1 defensemen out there, and or Power Play 2, or just defensemen who are more interesting now, and then we can maybe come up with a ranking as we go. And I want to start in Washington with the trade. Rasmus Sandin, the Leafs sent Sandin to Washington for Eric Gustafsson and a first. So clearly the Leafs decided they were going to bring in a whole bunch of defensemen, and why not downgrade here a little bit, get a first while they're at it. It's pretty rare, by the way, for a team that's like going for it to make a trade where they get a first. Like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So interesting. But anyway, listeners, tweet us or let us know if you could think of an example. But yeah, Sandin is obviously the most interesting. Gustafsson goes to Toronto. They have Morgan Riley, quarterback in the top power play. I think Gustafsson's pretty much lost all his value. I don't know if we really need to dive too much into him, though the Leafs did kind of stink in their last game. So who knows if maybe they're going to change things up. But I guess I want to start with Rasmus Sandin, and then we could go to Gustafsson, because Sandin is taking over on the top power play on Washington. Had himself a huge game on Saturday, 3 assists. He was on the top power play. This is like the best situation. John Karlsson, by the way, the last update is that he won't be back until the end of March at the earliest. So at least a whole month of Sandin quarterbacking that power play with no competition. There's no Orlov. There's nobody. Okay. Trevor Van Riemsdyk is quarterbacking the second power play. So that's the competition, I guess, internally. So Brian, like, how high are we on Rasmus Sandin right now? I know that in the past, you've been very high on him, thinking he could steal the job from Morgan Riley. Now there's no job to steal. It's his. He just has to hold it. Great first game. Man, look at this.
Look at this. Yeah, we have to pay attention to Rasmus Sandin in Washington. because this is the first real honest to goodness opportunity he's had to run a power play. And not only is he running a power play, but he's playing on the power play with Alex Ovechkin. So I think you got to get him. And the reason I say it's his first honest to goodness opportunity is because in Toronto, he never really had too much of an opportunity, right? Even when Riley was injured, they were happy to use 5. I remember like it was a Sandin or Giordano. Everybody was rushing to get who's going to replace Riley on the power play. And I was like, oh, nobody. They're just going to add Michael Bunting and they're going to run with 5 forwards on the power play. And to me, that was sort of demonstrative of how little the Leafs believed in Sandin. And clearly Sandin felt that. I think it came out after the fact that he did demand a trade at some point and is probably pretty happy to have a fresh start. And I'm excited to see what he can do in that fresh start. The thing with predicting how anybody's going to do on that top power play in Washington is that there's not much precedent. Like John Karlsson, until this year, since taking over the power play quarterback role, he'd missed just 19 games over the last 5 seasons. And 13 of those games happened in 1 year. So basically, John Karlsson has always been there. The only other power play quarterback in Washington going back like 7-8 years now, back to 2015-16. That was, can you name him, Elon?
Oh my gosh. No, I don't think so.
I'll give you a hint. He was acquired.
He was acquired.
After John Karlsson like was power play quarterback already, they went out and brought in another.
Oh, I do remember this. And I remember that it turned out to be a bust, but I don't remember the name. Give it to me.
It was Kevin Shattenkirk. Yeah. And so Shattenkirk was not long for Washington and Karlsson just stepped back in. And yeah, on the power play for Washington, Shattenkirk was like, he was okay, but it was so long ago, it doesn't matter. Basically what I'm saying is we didn't have much of a precedent except till this year when Karlsson got injured. Erik Gustafsson did pretty well in his time on the power play. So I don't know why Sandin wouldn't either. We just also don't have a whole lot of data on Sandin himself being in a position where he can be believed in. And I'm kind of like, I'm not going to say it's exactly the same thing, but fresh starts do mean something. Look at Philip Gustafsson, who struggled in Ottawa with an organization that didn't believe in him, went to Minnesota where they're like, yeah, we kind of need you this year. And he's been stunning, sterling, playing fantastic. And I wonder if Sandin can get a similar bump moving to a team that wants him and is going to put him in a position to succeed. So all this to say, Rasmus Sandin, I would go get him, hold him for a few games. If he does nothing, you drop him. But quarterbacking the top power play in Washington, pretty good place to produce from. One thing I'm curious on that I haven't been able to dig up a full answers, and anyone can tweet at us if you happen to know, is whether Washington has changed the way their power play operates without John Karlsson, or if they're like just doing the same thing but plugging in a different guy into Karlsson's spot, or if they've moved like production or the passing network away from Karlsson's spot on the unit. So if anybody knows, please let me know, because that would also impact my answer on Sandin. I'm sort of assuming that Sandin gets to basically copy what John Karlsson was doing.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing, like you said, Brian, just go get him. Don't worry about all that stuff about how the power play is running. Eventually they try to get it to Ovechkin on the left side and he tries to, do a one-timer. That's basically how it works most of the time, from what I recall. But yeah, get him. And then, like you said, we'll see what happens. Like, he took no shots. Also, this game was against San Jose, where the Capitals like utterly destroyed them 8-3. So you don't want to read too much into a single game against a weak opponent. But still, like you said, Brian, it's top power play on Washington. You go get him. So good for Rasmus Sandin. While we're on Washington, I mentioned like jokingly Trevor Van Riemsdyk, but actually he's not nothing. Like he has been nothing for most of his career in terms of fantasy. But he has 2 assists in his last 5 games, which is, but also 3+ shots in each of those last 5 games. So Trevor Van Riemsdyk has been, picking things up a little bit on the offensive side, and that goes along with a ton of blocks. He's 7th in the league in blocks. So if you are in a multi-category league, like Trevor Van Riemsdyk has, there's obviously a deeper cut, but this is a guy who now is going to get some power play time on Washington. Obviously, the second power play doesn't play like as much as on some other teams, but also the second power play does often have Alex Ovechkin, who just stays out for the whole time. So TVR could end up getting some significant time. He seems to be shooting a lot. He's still going to give you those blocks. So I'm pretty into him. I actually grabbed him in my dynasty league like before the breakout, just because I needed the blocks going into the fantasy playoffs. I had Alec Martinez. I was able to make a trade to get rid of Martinez, dump that big salary. And I figured I should pick someone up to, replace those blocks. I picked up TVR. Now I'm super excited about him. I'm curious to see what he's going to do like long-term, because he's a free agent at the end of this year. But we don't need to talk about that. But for this year, just wanted to mention him, that he's someone that you may want to look at, especially if your league counts blocks.
He's been sorry. Trevor Van Riemsdyk has been on and off my watch list through the season. And like you said, Elon, those peripherals are the reason why. But lately, he has added this little trick to his stats, which is 5 straight games with 3 or more shots on goal, including 5. Although who didn't take 5 shots against San Jose on Saturday night or on any night? So that's a nice little bonus value from Trevor Van Riemsdyk. And the points do come like every so often. On the whole, he's still on a 23-point pace on the season, which is tied for his career high point pace. So we're not looking for some kind of offensive explosion. But Elon, I like your thinking that if he does get any power play time with OV, that maybe he can sort of how Darnell Nurse find some extra points by being that, second defenseman to come out and quarterback if McDavid and Draisaitl stay on.
Okay, and then I guess on Washington, one other player I'll mention is TJ Oshie is really hot right now. And he's probably available in a lot of leagues. He had a power play goal against the Sharks, up to 8 points in the last 5 games. Sometimes just want to mention it. Obviously, he's not going to keep it up to this extent, but he's in a really good spot right now on that power play, just like Sandin. Basically, this whole show we'll just be talking about the Washington power play. But yeah, Oshie on a hot streak right now. And if he's in free agency, I would take a look.
Yeah, we've said to kind of just ignore Oshie through most of the season, even when he looks good. But he's the sort of guy, he gets hot, you want him, then he snoozes and you let go. Oshie on this run, 5 goals on 13 shots. I mean, he's generally an efficient shooter. The last few years, 15% or thereabouts. And 3 of his 5 goals in this run have come on the power play, which means those are higher percentage opportunities. It's not total luck that Oshie is shooting 39% on this run he's on and regress him. And he's still on a nice little run. So I would look at him like Washington plays Monday, which is hopefully when you're listening to this. I'd consider him for that game. And then I'd reconsider after. Oshie's kind of like a guy who, if you have him on your roster, you check every couple games, make sure he's still producing. And if not, you cut ties.
Okay. And then, like I said, on the other side of the trade, you got Eric Gustafsson coming to the Leafs. He's played 2 games now, 2 shots on goal total in those 2 games, no points. He's been on the second power play. So yeah, unless there's a shakeup, obviously I'd be watching game day tweets to see if the Leafs do shake things up. I did see a tweet from someone saying how the power play looked bad and they might need to do something, but obviously that's just conjecture. I think that you could probably just dump Eric Gustafsson, especially if you could get like a Sandin or maybe some of the other guys we're going to talk about. The Leafs also, by the way, got a ton of defensemen in this past week. Luke Shen, Jake McCabe. They also picked up Sam Lafferty. So yeah, they're just stocking up on lower end guys and filling out their defense. So we'll see how that works for them in the playoffs. They also got Matt Murray back, Brian, and he played that game on Saturday and did not do well. 4 goals against on 24 shots, marked as a really bad start over on Frozen Tools. So I don't know. Matt Murray didn't benefit from the extra defense. And I think at this point, we could just be confident that even if you had him in your IR and now we're happy to get that start, you weren't happy after the game. I think Samsonov is probably the starter moving forward until he falters, which I don't think he will.
Seems like it. This is sort of like, I've tweeted about the circle of Matt Murray before, where he starts slow and then he gets on a roll and he impresses, and then he gets injured again. So we're just renewing the cycle for Murray. But I don't know that we're going to get a chance to see it play out, because Samsonov has definitely emerged as someone the Leafs are probably going to try and rely on, especially see how he does down the stretch. And if he holds up, he can probably go the distance and into the playoffs as well. So a tough break for Matt Murray to watch the other goalie run away with the job basically while he's on the shelf. But what else can you do? So yeah, if you have Matt Murray, I would be looking at maybe you're getting 1 out of every 3 starts, maybe 50-50 at best, so long as the current play from each goalie holds.
Yeah, and then also in this game against Vancouver, which was a 4-1 loss, I don't know how much to blame on Matt Murray. The Leafs only did score 1 goal. They also had some bad news. Ryan O'Reilly got hurt, and it looks like we don't have an update right now. Shams is saying in the chat here there's going to be no news until tomorrow's practice, so Monday. So maybe by the time you're listening to this, you might want to check on Game Day News and see if we've retweeted any updates on Ryan O'Reilly. But this guy is kind of interesting because he came to the Leafs, did nothing in his first game, got on a line with Marner and Tavares, had that huge game against Buffalo, 3 goals and an assist. Everyone rushed to grab him if he was available in free agency. And then over these next 5 games, he's done nothing. Pointless. Couple shots on average per game in those 5 games. So now he might be hurt. So maybe this is a moot point anyways, but I was going to ask you before this game, like I had him on the docket to ask Brian, like, is he someone you still hold because he's on this good line? Or is this back to just like, yeah, he's Ryan O'Reilly from the rest of the season, which was not worth holding in any fantasy league?
Sorry, we're going to do the rest without evidence. I said it. I think I'd want to hold O'Reilly like a little longer. I think if he's hurt, like that's actually a great chance to put him on IR, and hopefully you keep O'Reilly stashed there while you gather a little more data. Like he plays another couple games if you're allowed to do that. Just hold him in IR on your roster and see what happens. But the line is still doing well with Tavares and Marner. Tavares himself only has 2 points in his last 5 games, both of them goals, but still tons of shots coming for Tavares and like some on the power play. But I think I would just keep the faith in Ryan O'Reilly playing with Tavares and Marner, which should be a pretty good place to produce from, especially if you're centering the line. So yeah, my move would be to stash him in IR, not activate him when he's healthy for a game or two, and use that data to make up your mind. But I have a hunch that O'Reilly will be generally rosterable, especially if like, shots are always hard to come by from O'Reilly. But if your format just rewards like points, then you will, I think, find it worthwhile to hold him through the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree. Obviously, this is more for deeper leagues and shallower leagues. You maybe just don't want to wait for him to heat up again. But yeah, with those line mates, it's the kind of thing where you can't expect him to go cold for too long. Okay, so Brian, I said I wanted to stick with defense. So we've talked about Sandin, we've talked about Gustafsson. Let's go to Edmonton next. Let's talk about that big trade they made where they sent Ekholm and a 6th to Nashville they sent Reed Schaefer, Tyson Barrie, and a 2023 first and a 2024 fourth to Nashville to get Matthias Ekholm. So that's a huge price to pay. Schaefer apparently is on a big streak right now in the minors, I was seeing. So I don't know. Hopefully the Oilers won't end up regretting this. Barrie scored a goal in the last game. Anyways, as far as fantasy goes, like Matthias Ekholm obviously is meant to be more of like a good, minute muncher, like defensive player. I think that's going to help the team, which they've needed for a while. So, I'm not going to say that this is like a bad move, but in terms of fantasy, Ekholm doesn't seem too exciting anymore. Like he, Shams and I talked about him on short shifts. He had played a game, he had an assist, but like since then, like no power play time. The peripherals weren't even that great in the last couple games. I think you'd have to be in a pretty deep league. Like, yeah, he's like everything we said before is true. Like, he was going to be on the ice a lot and potentially like, Edmonton scores a lot of goals, even at even strength. So, he's probably going to get in and get some assists, but he's not too exciting to me. I think the real guy on Edmonton that's exciting all of a sudden is Bouchard, right? Top power play. One sec. Sorry. One sec. I just want to check one thing quickly.
You okay?
Yeah. On top power play. I think I said the wrong name before. Like at the start when I said Bouchard. I think I said a different Bouchard. But anyways, okay. Anyways,
you did say Matthias Ekholm.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Well, I think that's a
okay. Top power play. I think the guy who really benefits from this trade is with Tyson Barrie out of the picture. All of a sudden, Bouchard has huge value for fantasy managers all of a sudden. And this is a guy who, like, we've been waiting like for so long. We thought going into the year that maybe Evan Bouchard would be the guy. I think I said Eric Bouchard at the start of the show when I mentioned him. I'm just realizing now. But okay, Evan Bouchard. I don't know. Was there a hockey player named Eric Bouchard at some point? Anyway, Bouchard now, PP1, had 3 assists, 2 power play assists versus Winnipeg after a couple pointless games from the top power play. So I was getting a little worried that, I wonder if he's going to hold this. Maybe like Nurse takes the spot. Maybe Ekholm gets it. But obviously a 3 assist game is going to help with that. And I think the plan is obviously for Evan Bouchard to be the main guy there on PP1. And I'd be curious to know, Brian, does that make Bouchard more or less exciting than Rasmus Sandin? Like, let's say, this is the cupful, playoffs start next week. It's 3 weeks. So you don't have to include but John Karlsson may be back at some point. Like, assuming this is for the entire duration of John Karlsson being out, I'm curious to know which of those 2 defensemen you'd be more interested in.
Definitely Evan Bouchard. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, still. Definitely Evan Bouchard. Like, I ran out and I grabbed him in 2 leagues somehow. I'm never first on the news. I was first on the news in a couple leagues. Actually, in my cupful division, someone went and grabbed Matthias Ekholm 10 minutes before I grabbed Evan Bouchard. And as you already mentioned, Elon, yeah, like I'm not into Ekholm pointed before Bouchard. So like I was wondering kind of, but not really. Like Ekholm has been 35, 40 point defenseman in his career. And unlike, which is like Darnell Nurse production, except Darnell Nurse generally less this season, but puts up peripherals, and Matthias Ekholm never has, and is even like below Nurse's peripheral production when Nurse is below his own peripheral production. So like maybe Ekholm gets a few more points because he's on Edmonton and on the ice more often with McDavid and Draisaitl, but no, I don't really want him. I want Evan Bouchard. I think that's the much more exciting opportunity. And I saw an interview with Ken Holland who said, like, he's paid his dues. It's time for Evan Bouchard to get the opportunity. And between Bouchard and Sandin, yeah, I'll take Bouchard. I'll take someone, I think, as enticing as that Washington power play is with Ovechkin, that Edmonton power play has eclipsed it in terms of the league's best and most productive power play to play on. So I am very happy to have Evan Bouchard in a couple leagues. And Elon, you said there's no Eric Bouchard. You're either confusing Eric Bouchard with Edmund Bouchard, who played in various.
I'm definitely not.
NHL. Well, he played for the Hamilton Tigers back in the 1922-23 season. 5'10", 185, 39 points in 223 career NHL games from 1921 to 1932. But maybe you were also thinking of Eric Chouinard. Oh no, I don't even know who that is. I was thinking of Matthew Chouinard, who's the goalie that the Sens drafted twice after he didn't sign an ELC with them. Who's Eric Chouinard?
It was just a brain fart, and I don't know why you needed to go down that rabbit hole.
I think he's a figure skater.
Yeah, that does sound familiar. But okay, also on Edmonton, since we're here, they acquired Nick Bjugstad. He scored a goal in his first game, but he's a bottom sixer, so probably not something to get too excited about. But I would watch, like I was talking about with Shams, you never know when Edmonton's going to shake things up. And Bjugstad, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point this season he gets on a line with McDavid and Draisaitl or Draisaitl. You think for sure not?
I mean, if he ever does, like, go ahead. But yeah, I think he's there for center depth. Like they're happy to have somebody that they can play on their third line and be useful there. I think it's kind of defeating the purpose if he's elsewhere. By the way, Eric Chouinard, 11 career points in 40 and in 90 NHL games.
Yeah, like we had like so much free time.
Largely played with Philadelphia and Minnesota.
Yeah, with Bjugstad, I'm just saying I'm just so used to Edmonton just like shaking around those lines so often that everyone gets a shot at some point in the top two. But maybe at this point, it's not the case anymore. Also, while we're here, who should I mention? Should I mention Jack Campbell? He had a really brutal game. I mean, but I guess if anyone still has Jack Campbell, like, come on, he just let in 6 against Winnipeg after Skinner got the previous 3 games. So I think we all know what to do with him if you still had him. I guess the other thing is, like, really, we probably should be taking some time to talk about McDavid, Draisaitl, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, because they're just having incredible, like, they've just had incredible, like, last couple weeks to go along with, like, incredible seasons, but we don't have time. Okay. So let's just assume that we did talk about those 3.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we just need to say their names. We're like, oh yeah, they're great. And I also, Elon, just sorry, I know you want to move on, but just going back,
you want to talk more about Eric Chouinard or Bouchard?
No, none of these guys. Just Reed Schaefer. He was like, he's been on a run lately. He's still in the WHL, right? He's plays for Seattle and the like junior hockey with like, so if you're not scoring over a point per game, then you're never going to make the NHL. So this is like just what's expected from a 19-year-old at that level of hockey. Yeah. So wow. I just didn't want to
Debbie, what a downer here on,
I'm not
Schaefer, former first round pick. And I saw a tweet saying he's on a really hot run right now and people are excited about him. Anyway, whatever.
He is. And be excited. That's great. I felt like the implication was that, well, one, this might be in the AHL, which it's not. That would mean more if it was there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
On the Nashville side, they get Tyson Barrie. But they're clearly also rebuilding. Like they traded Granlund and they traded Jeannot. The roster is looking pretty thin. Like with Forsberg out, if you look at Nashville's last game, these were the lines that Duchesne is there. And he was playing with Cody Glass and John Leonard. And then my guy, Tommy Novak, I was so excited about last week playing with all these good players. He was on a line with Kiefer Sherwood and Luke Evangelista. And then Colton Sissons, Yakov Trenin, and Cole Smith. Mark Jankowski played with Rasmus Asplund. Oh, yeah, they brought in Rasmus Asplund. And anyway, as you can tell, like all of a sudden Nashville's turning into one of these teams that's like a Chicago, right? Or like an Arizona. It's like, who are these people? But anyways, Tyson Barrie's there. He was on the second power play. Roman Josi obviously is the main guy there. So even though Barrie scored a goal, I assume he falls down the list. Maybe he's like a similar to Eric Gustafsson at this point, like someone who used to be so valuable and all of a sudden just lost it all. Well, so depressing if you have one of them, I would imagine.
Oh, it's awful. Like this is a carriage to pumpkin moment for anybody rostering Barrie. Like you had this gold mine. And I think the rug was just pulled out from under you with the Oilers, probably trying to make a move and finding ways to clear salary. You could have maybe guessed that Barrie would be somebody that they'd consider moving. But yeah, this is a big giant oof for anybody who took that draft day swing on Barrie and his benefit. Like, good for you. That swing has gotten you probably up to your fantasy hockey playoffs. But now that swing has suddenly gone to nothing and you're starting from scratch for your fantasy hockey playoffs. So good luck. I hope we name some good replacement candidates already, but I'm not holding on to Tyson Barrie to find out what happens. He's on the second pair with McDonough, which is like a bit of a 5-on-5 upgrade compared to his Edmonton deployment. And he's on the second power play unit with nobody. So that's a big bummer.
To be fair, Roman Josi's on the first power play with mostly nobody also, but at least he's there. At least he's there for more time. Barrie, but yeah, 4 shots and a goal. Like I'll bet you Tyson Barrie will still be rosterable in some leagues, and I'll bet you he'll go on and off. But like not the sure thing, obviously, like it was in Edmonton. We still have some more defensemen I wanted to get to. I'll just name drop them here. Klingberg is now a top power play guy. Gostisbehere, I guess, isn't, but seemed like he was today at least. So we'll talk about them, and then we'll also get to some forwards at some point, and some goalies even. We'll cover the gamut. So we're just gonna take a quick break. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, Brian, we are back. So what's our ranking so far of the defense we've talked about? We're going Bouchard first, then Sandin, then I guess do we rank Barrie and Gustafsson? I'll go Barrie first, then Gustafsson. Do you concur, or are you going to go Gustafsson ahead?
No, I'll go Barrie. Like you said, the shots are still coming, and Gustafsson I really expect absolutely nothing from. So yes, I think that's a good ranking so far.
All right, so now we're going to throw John Klingberg into the mix, who goes from not being on the top power play in Anaheim. He got bumped by Cam Fowler early on in the season, really just wasn't a good stint, and it didn't work out for the Ducks, like either, like both of them just like it was a total bust, right? I mean, Klingberg, I guess you can't say was too much of a bust because he did make $7 million. But the Ducks were hoping that they could sign him and then flip him at the deadline, get like a first, like I think they got like a fourth and a couple players I'd never heard of that one of them's not even signed. So yeah, but now Minnesota gets John Klingberg for peanuts. And then in his first game with the Wild, he was right there on the top power play. And like, of course he was, right? Like they don't like Calen Addison that much. He's been scratched for a bunch of games. I'm sure one day Calen Addison will have a chance again. But in the meantime, they weren't going to give it to Spurgeon after they didn't have it, on Spurgeon all year. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, it was one game. It was a very successful game for the Minnesota Wild. They shut out the Calgary Flames 3-0. Great job by Philip Gustafsson, who's stolen the net over there. So yeah, he's definitely someone, by the way, as a side point, like go get him, I think right now, if he's available. But yeah, as far as John Klingberg goes, he didn't get a point in this game. He was +3. So that means that he was on the ice for 3 even strength goals. I'd imagine his IPP generally would indicate that he would have gotten in on at least one of them. Plus he was, got 80% of the power play time. Like he just played like the majority of the power play time for the team. So I guess Minnesota didn't score a power play goal, but that doesn't mean they won't in the future with a guy like Kirill Kaprizov on there. So I'm very interested in Klingberg. So Brian, let's get your thoughts on him, and then you could slot him in above or below the Bouchards and the Sandins of the world who might be available in free agency.
Yeah, well, I'll slot him under the Bouchard and Sandin right now, but I might slot Klingberg. Actually, I will slot Klingberg ahead of Tyson Barrie, who I think is next, unless I'm forgetting anybody else in our rankings so far. I love this opportunity for Klingberg and for Minnesota. Like you said, Elon, his points participation rate is usually 40% at 5-on-5. So maybe he would have gotten a point on those 3 5-on-5 goals scored while he was on the ice, which is great, right? Like Klingberg's on a team that can score goals. It hasn't had total success. Like Minnesota's had their own struggles this year, but this is definitely a better spot for him than Anaheim, where everything was just constantly on fire. And Klingberg is, I think, decent defensively, but he can't do like the huge heavy lifting that was going to be necessary. So hopefully there's some help around him to generate some offense. I don't still expect him, though, to be super active. Like I love that Klingberg has a chance to quarterback a good power play, but the Minnesota blue line on the power play will I was actually going to say that they haven't been that great when I was doing my prep for the show, but then I was wondering, Elon, how many in 57 games, do you know offhand, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, maybe just the listeners, whatever, how many power play points do you think Calen Addison has collected?
Yeah, but okay, I'm going to imagine it's low. There's a reason why he is not rostered in too many fantasy leagues. Though I will say that is it possible that the Minnesota power play hasn't been that successful because they haven't had someone who has experience and is good enough to run it. Like Spurgeon never was that amazing. Like Klingberg has had a lot of success on Dallas, has been like a 50, 60 point defenseman in the past. So obviously I get what you're saying though. Like it hasn't that successful, but I feel like the personnel is there. You got Boldy, you've got Zuccarello, you've got Kaprizov. Who's the other one there? Oh, Joel Eriksson-Ek. Those are 4 good forwards that I think Klingberg should be able to work with.
Yeah, and actually, Minnesota has been running an above average power play this year, just barely, but they are converting on almost 23% of their opportunities, which is about 1% and a bit higher than the league average. And to answer my own question, Elon, Calen Addison has 18 power play points in 57 games. Yeah, I know. I didn't realize it either. I'll get it to why in a second. But that basically, like Addison's been pacing for 26 power play points on the year. But the kicker is that he's pacing for 40 points total, which means that Calen Addison, if he continued to power play the quarterback, would get 8 more power play points and just 4 more non-power play points over the remaining 25 games. So that means that, yeah, there is hope for Klingberg to get in on the offense on the power play, and maybe he can be a more effective 5-on-5 producer than Addison, which would give us some fantasy value from the blue line in Minnesota. Like Addison, of course, if you have been rostering him for those power play points, I mean, he was useless pretty much with those top power play minutes. Now Calen Addison is completely useless until further notice. So I hope Klingberg makes his case to have a solid rest of the season, especially because I have him on one of my fantasy teams. Infamously drafted him 2 spots before you drafted Erik Karlsson. That was still getting over that.
Hey, well, who knows? Maybe Klingberg turns it on over in Minnesota. It's not like Erik Karlsson is going to have a lot of people to play with. We'll talk about the Sharks in a little bit. But I guess since we're on Minnesota, I'll mention that they also got Marcus Johansson, who you may be thinking, like boring, but he's actually been on a good line. Like in his first game, he played with Joel Eriksson-Ek and Matt Boldy on, I guess, what you would call the second line, I guess. And Marjo had an assist. I guess this was the second game actually with the Wild. This was the game against Calgary where they won 3-0. He had an assist. He took 4 shots. Like, I'm not going to go out and like be like, oh, you should go and grab Marcus Johansson, but he also got like a decent amount of power play time, I'll just mention. So he's not someone that I would completely ignore. Like maybe it's the kind of thing, like if Minnesota has a good streaming schedule, you can try him out. Don't expect him to be a hold all season, but I like the spot he's in, so I just wanted to shout him out a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, consider shout out complete because I'm into random trivia, Elon, on this episode. Can you name, I forgot how many other teams Marcus Johansson has played with. How many can you name?
So I know he was on Washington. That's when you liked him. Back then, back when he was on Washington, you used to be like all about Marcus Johansson.
It was Marcus Johansson and Andre Burakovsky taking turns on the top power play. Yeah.
We were like, what is this travesty that Johansson's not on the top power play whenever he wasn't there? Okay. I believe he went to Boston after that.
Yes.
Okay. I know he went to Minnesota like previously. Now he's back on Minnesota. In between then, obviously recently he was on Washington. I'd imagine there was a team in between or two. Where else did he go? I don't know. This is probably not good content. So
you're doing really well though. Boston, he went from Washington to Boston to Buffalo. Remember those brief hopeful Buffalo days, to Minnesota, to Seattle, to Washington.
Oh yeah, he was on Seattle.
And then Minnesota. Somehow he's been on 3 teams since two other teams since having been on the Kraken, who've only existed for a year and a half.
Okay, well, here he is now and currently getting good deployment. The thing is, even like those 4 shots are pretty rare. Like normally he doesn't take a lot of shots. That's why he's not too excited, even when he's in a good spot. But okay, so we've got Klingberg. You're putting him after Bouchard and Sandin. I guess I could get behind that. I think Sandin and Klingberg could go either way. I'm definitely with you that Bouchard is number 1 over there right now. Let's add another defenseman to the list. Okay, let's talk about Shane Gostisbehere, who was also acquired for peanuts. Carolina, well, not total peanuts, but a 2026 third. I don't know what the value is to people people of like a pick that's like so far away, like a 3rd round pick. Like Carolina's hoping they'll have a couple cups already by the time they have to pay up for Shane Gostisbehere, who, man, oh man, what a game today and what a start with the Hurricanes overall. Like Gostisbehere came in, not top power play, but they do seem to run 2 pretty even units, maybe like a little bit less time. But in game 1, Gostisbehere scored a goal against his former team, the Coyotes, in a romp. It was 6-1 Carolina. So I would have definitely, if that was it, I would have been like, don't read too much into it. Like it was against Arizona, whatever. That was a power play goal. Then today, 1 goal, 2 assists against Tampa Bay in another huge win for the Canes, who are making a statement. Like everyone's talking about Boston, and they're like, hey, don't forget about us. And yeah, they just stomped Tampa with Vasilevsky in net, 6-0. And Shane Gostisbehere, 1 goal and 2 assists, all on the power play from this like not top unit. Like this was a unit of Teravainen, who had a huge game, Kotkaniemi, who had a huge game. Yeah, just basically this power play feasted. Gostisbehere, Seth Jarvis, Paul Stastny, and then the top unit of Nason, Aho, Necha, Svechnikov, Burns, I guess didn't get in on as much of the fun. So this could be good news for Gostisbehere. Like clearly they acquired him for a reason, and that was to play power play time, and he's showing that he is worthy of this power play time. So I thought this was going to be like a downgrade for him until like, I guess like when like Valimaki started getting power play over Gostisbehere in his final days in Arizona, then I was like, okay, I guess anywhere will be better. But now I'm pretty excited about him. Of course, it's easy to say that when he's had 2 huge games. So I'm ready for you to pour the cold water and say like, there's no way this keeps up. So I don't know, how interested are you? And I'm curious to see where he'll slot in above. I feel like you're going to have him definitely below Bouchard. We can even forget about him. You can just tell me right now, is there anyone we're going to talk about that you like more than Bouchard? I can't imagine.
No, I don't think so. I think the upside is just so sky high for Evan Bouchard, which is the point we've made. I'll take Gostisbehere above Tyson Barrie, and I think I will
below
take
Klingberg.
That for me, it's tough. I think I'll take power play 1 John Klingberg over Shane Gostisbehere. I mean, the thing is that Carolina is scoring at will these days, so it's hard to turn away. I'd consider them pretty even options, and I do like that Gostisbehere at least shoots, right? Like he's taken a lot of shots. Today, I think I made these notes once the game had finished, but now after today's game, Gostisbehere has 2 power play goals on 5 shots, plus 2 power play assists in his 2 games with the Hurricanes, which gives Gostisbehere 4 power play points from the second unit over 2 games. So this is not sustainable production, but it's fun, right? And I think there's going to be, we're going to have this conversation a little bit about Jacob Chychrun in a short amount of time, I imagine. But one thought is that, hey, Gostisbehere is going to Carolina. They're better offensively. And the truth is that in expected goals, yes, that's true. At 5-on-5, Carolina has 1 more expected goal per 60 minutes, which is a huge gap. Carolina is basically one of the top teams in the league in generating offense, and Arizona is one of the worst. But as we've talked about on the show a couple times, Arizona has somehow beaten that expected number steadily for like 2 seasons now. And their actual goals scored per 60 minutes is actually extremely similar to Carolina's at 5-on-5. So we'll see if Gostisbehere being on Carolina at 5-on-5 gets him more offensive production. But I think it's probably going to overall be a downgrade from what we saw from him in Arizona, which was top power play and on a team that has scored as many actual goals per 60 minutes as Carolina does already.
Yeah, it's hard to say after this game today, but like the points you're saying are making sense for sure. So yeah, but definitely I think he's someone you should roster. Like I would just ride the wave.
Get him. Yeah, ride the wave. Get him while he's hot. Everybody adds like Jacob Slavin when he gets hot on Carolina. And like speaking of which, Elon, Brady Shea has gone back to being Brady Shea. Like I've been sort of like not wanting to bring it up, but it's been the case for a while. Right? Like but I was actually surprised to learn you've still been rostering him.
Well, I dropped him recently after that trade, but yeah, he was getting still good power play time for a while. But after this trade, now he's totally off all the power plays.
He had 7 points. He's 7 points in his last 19 games, which is basically how his season started too. He had that nice little middle bit, but aside from that, Brady Shea is back to being like I just want to I don't think he emerged or broke out as like a new offense. He's someone who can do it, but I don't think he's going to be like someone that needs to be rostered from here on out or next year either, unless something big changes.
Well, Shane Gostisbehere is going to be a UFA, and maybe if Brady Shea comes back and is again getting power play time, then I'd be interested again.
But even with that, the shots have still been decent for Brady Shea. Yeah.
We don't have time to talk about him.
All right.
I do want to though mention the other defenseman on the team, Brent Burns, who is on a huge hot streak right now and is definitely worth calling out. He had 4 assists versus Arizona in the 6-1 win. I believe he also had another assist today. I think that power play at least did score 1 goal at some point. Yeah, the last goal of the game, Kotkaniemi on the power play from Burns and Martin Necas. So yeah, he got on the board again. This brings Burns, okay, like before today, he had 12 points in the last 8 games, like the 13 points in his last 9 games, like approaching a 70-point pace. This is like better than what we were hoping for. Like I remember when he came to Carolina, everyone was like, oh my God, this is going to be such a huge improvement over San Jose. And then, some people were like, oh, maybe pump the brakes. Like he's kind of old. I don't know what he's getting, but this is great. Like this is like more, I think, than even what people expected.
Yeah, I think we were looking at him as like 60, maybe 65 points, and Brent Burns is on a 67-point pace right now, which makes this his best season since the first year that Karlsson joined him in San Jose, and then things went pretty far south ever since then. But the funny thing about Burns' season and success in Carolina is that his numbers look incredibly similar, like eerily similar to Tony DeAngelo's in Carolina last year. Like you could convince me looking at their numbers that it's the same guy who just changed the nameplate and number on the back of his jersey. Like I haven't gone like deep into the micro stats or anything, but basically just what I look at in terms of offensive production and involvement in the offense and ratio of how much is produced at 5-on-5 versus power play. Like Brent Burns shoots a little more and has had a little more power play success, which is why right now he's pacing to beat DeAngelo's Carolina season by a few points. But it is like Carolina, man, like they have a system and they just put a guy into it. And it's like, hey, this is your job now. And they find the right guy for the job and he does the job. And boom, they've done it again with Brent Burns this year. So a hugely successful season for him. And I think that's credit to him, but also to the machine, the well-oiled machine that is the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, for sure. And another guy who's going to be joining that machine is Jesse Puljujarvi, who they acquired. He hasn't played a game yet, so we'll have to see. I wonder where he even slots in. Like you say, it's a well-oiled machine. Like they've got Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis on one line, Teravainen, Necas, Kotkaniemi that have been good. Then Stasny, Stepan, Nason, and Stahl, Fast, Marchinook. So I guess it's one of those bottom 6 lines. I'd be very surprised if Puljujarvi ends up having any value.
Yeah.
I
guess the question is like, is he more of like a Jesper Fast? Or is he more of a Seth Jarvis or Kotkaniemi? Like where on the Carolina secondary production spectrum or tertiary production spectrum does he sit? And I guess I'd lean towards the Jesper Fast side of things because Seth Jarvis and Kotkaniemi are doing quite well in their own right. And I'm not sure exactly what deployment Puljujarvi can get, but Carolina is never afraid to shake it up. And Puljujarvi might get some of the better looks that he's been getting. But I think at the end of the day, he is going to be a cog in this larger machine. And like Seth Jarvis for most of this year, he's might have opportunities, but he's not going to be like called upon or really have the opportunity to become a big time scorer here. So maybe he's worth a stream depending on where things go. Like I'd put him on my watch list. I want to see how he does in Carolina, but I don't think we're about to see like a brand new Puljujarvi emerge.
Yeah. So I said the same thing about Kotkaniemi. I think I would have been surprised to see him do something, and he just had a goal and 4 assists today. So you never know what could happen, but he'll need the opportunity.
Which is why you put him on the watch list and stream. Like Jarvis and Kotkaniemi are both pacing for like low 40 points, and that's with some big production recently. So I don't see why Puljujarvi would be any better than that in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was agreeing with you. But I think that it's interesting. It's another reclamation. Like Kotkaniemi was looking like a bit of a bust, and now, or maybe he still is, but Jarvis is still like, I think they're easing him in. They drafted Jarvis. I'm sure they're excited about him. I don't think they're going to be bumping him for Puljujarvi anytime soon. You brought up Jacob Chychrun. So I definitely want to talk to him. Maybe he's the defenseman actually that we should be considering ahead of Evan Bouchard moving forward. Actually, I think there's definitely a discussion to be had, and we'll get to that discussion in just a sec. I guess this whole first half is going to be just talking about defensemen. We'll see how it goes. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. We'll be back soon. All right, we are back, Brian. We've been ranking defensemen who are in new situations after the trade deadline. And of course, we have to talk about Jacob Chychrun, who goes to where? The Ottawa Who would have predicted this? The Ottawa Senators God, Jacob Chikrin. The Sens are so exciting now. I'll admit, I was kind of off I grew up in Ottawa. I was a Sens fan my whole life. I moved to Toronto. I was like, I don't have time to, the Sens were bad and blah, blah, blah. I have no excuse. Okay. But even though I'm making them, but now I'm like so excited about this team. They've won 5 in a row. Now they've just picked up Chikrin, who's looking so good. He had a goal and an assist versus Columbus. He's on the second power play, but, producing anyways, which is, been like something he's been able to do also in Arizona, even when he wasn't getting the power play last year. I know was a bit tough, but Ottawa paid like a lot, but also not a lot, depending on how you think about it. Because I know the price tag was supposed to be like a huge prospect, also along with some picks for Chikrin. Sent a first in this year, a second next year, and then another second like a couple years down the road in 2026. Do you think, Brian, that Jacob Chikrin can be just as good like on Ottawa on the second power play as he was on Arizona on the top power play, just because he's going to be playing on a higher scoring team? That was kind of Shams's take when we talked about the trade on short shifts. So far looking really, really good, but again, small sample size, but he's Jacob Chikrin's amazing. And the Sens are amazing. 5 wins in a row. They're 3 points out of the wild card now behind Pittsburgh. They're tied with a bunch of teams like Buffalo, Florida, Washington, Ottawa. All right. It's going to be so exciting. They might make it.
I gotta be honest, like I didn't even know what Jacob Chikrin looked like. Like we've talked about him so much over the years, but he's never been on my roster. And
he's very strong, Brian. He's like very buff.
Oh,
you should look up a picture
ripped.
of him without a shirt.
Yes. I was talking to my brother about him today, and he's like, I saw him get off the bus and he was just like a mountain next to other professional athletes. Like, yes, this guy, he's had nothing to do but condition himself. I don't know if he's always looked this way, but everyone is Chikrin is in love with Ottawa. Ottawa's in love with him. Do you know his grandfather has been doing like various radio spots through the week
That's
since
fun.
being acquired? And like they showed a clip of his reaction. Actually, it was a really funny thing on the Sens broadcast. They showed Jacob Chikrin after he scored a goal right on Saturday night. And they show Kyle Bukauskas was interviewing him. It's like, here's your grandfather's reaction when you scored the goal. And like, his grandfather's just like standing there and like smiling and like takes a bite of like his Timmy's donut or something. And like Chikrin's like crying. He's like, oh, that's kind of emotional. Like that really gets me. It seemed like anyway, it's a very nice, the vibes are really good in Ottawa right now. And to your question about whether Jacob Chikrin can do better in Ottawa as well, even without top power play, my knee-jerk response was no, he can't, because that top power play is kind of important. But I'm wondering if he can. Like the thing, again, and I mentioned this with Gostisbehere, is that Arizona has been very successful at scoring goals this year, even more so with Chikrin on the ice than Gostisbehere. Like Chikrin on the ice, Carolina is scoring over 3 goals per 60 minutes, which is basically like top end production. Usually you see like maybe 2.5, 2 3/4. The elite lines do 3 or more. But Jacob Chikrin was not on an elite line, and Arizona was still scoring over 3 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 on about 2.5 expected goals. Ottawa has been miserable at 5-on-5 for a lot of the year. They are scoring almost a full goal less than Arizona per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, but have an expected number that's about a quarter of a goal higher per 60 minutes. So like, this is all to say, I don't know that Chikrin does better at 5-on-5 in Ottawa, just because Arizona was ripping it up with Chikrin on the ice. But a lot of his points have come from strong 5-on-5 production this year. And it's looked about the same as it has for Chikrin at 5-on-5 as it did 2 seasons prior in his 60-point pace breakout. And his power play production in Arizona wasn't especially great either. So like, this is all to say, I don't know, I'm throwing out a lot of data here, but to take something away from it is that I think Chikrin could probably keep up like a 60-point pace in Ottawa, even if he's not on the top power play, which is like a big thing to say. And it's a bit of a swing. I think a 50-point pace might be more likely, but I think a 60-point pace is possible. And Elon, I'm going to throw out the possibility that maybe he does see some top power play time. Like we've mentioned all season long that Thomas Chabot has been up there, but he doesn't put up a lot of points there. That said, the Sens don't really care that he puts up, whether or not Chabot puts up points there. They care that the unit converts, and they do. Like that's a pretty successful top power play unit, and why really mess with something if it's working? They're not measuring their player success in fantasy points either. So there's a lot of unknowns here. But I'm open to the possibility that Chychrun still retains pretty solid fantasy value, doesn't take much of a hit due to moving to Ottawa and losing the opportunity to quarterback a top power play.
Yeah, like also I love the shots. Like that's something I like better than Bouchard. So I could see reasons why, yeah, even not on the top power play, I could see Chychrun being more valuable than Bouchard and similar, like you said, to what he did in Arizona. Also, that second power play on Ottawa, like they don't get as much time, obviously, but they do have Claude Giroux on there, who is having himself a monster season. Like it's almost like just being on a power play with Giroux has got to be worth something. He's got now 63 points in 62 games after putting up 10 in his last 5. Giroux is just a monster. Tim Stützle, I can just like brag about like Sens players doing well for a little bit. Like I don't think we did any analysis here, but Stützle is now on a 93-point pace on the season after scoring goals in 4 straight games, including 2 on Saturday, looking like so far the runaway like top pick of his draft, even though he went third overall. So that was a bit of a steal for the Sens. Cam Talbot, I should mention, he might be available in some leagues. I guess we've done this like a bunch of times this year where I brought up Cam Talbot getting starts, and then you said, I don't believe it'll last. But at this point, Ottawa's going on a run, trying to go for the playoffs. He's their clear starter with Forsberg out. Like I know Sogard has been good, but I think the plan is, as long as Talbot can hold up, he's going to get the majority of the games to try to get the Sens into that 8th seed. So I would definitely be interested in Talbot right now because the Sens are just clicking. He doesn't even have to play so well. He just needs to be average, and I think he'll have a good chance of winning a lot of games.
Yeah, Talbot is like Ottawa's own rental, right? After they beat Detroit in those back-to-back home games before the deadline, that was when Talbot went from like a trade deadline bait to someone like that they were hoping to get a pick back in return for, to being like, yeah, you know what? We'll keep him because we're kind of going to need at least a warm NHL body, which is at least what Cam Talbot is. And I know that's pretty critical. He hasn't played great, but he is better than, going to your 2 AHL goalies and hoping they'll carry you through what's is going to have to be a pretty big playoff run. So Cam Talbot is in a good spot right now. I think he still could share the net a fair deal with Sogard. Like I don't see him getting more than 2 out of every 3 starts, especially if he's not playing lights out. But it's not a bad spot to be on this super hot Sens team, as you were saying, Elon. Like they're on fire in Ottawa. They've in 5 straight games, they have 5 or more goals. The team is shooting 16.5%. But like I said, the vibes are good. And even if this doesn't quite continue, I could see Ottawa adjusting their game and doing reasonably well against teams in lower scoring battles. And that's when they'll really need to call on Talbot and Sogard. As for Tim Stützle, by the way, he was drafted on average 89th overall in the Cupful this year. So the forwards taken before him were like Mark Stone, Evgeny Malkin, Patrice Bergeron, Buchnevich, Pavelski, Dylan Larkin. Like, stop me when you hear somebody that you would take before Stützle again.
I mean, Malkin's been really good.
Well, my hot take was going to be Malkin's been really good. He's pacing for 83 points. I would take Stützle ahead of Malkin.
No, for sure.
Even if you promised me that Malkin was going to play at least 70 games next year, I'd still take Stützle. Like I could see him having that ADP, like halving. I should really pronounce it to make sure what I'm saying. So like going from 90th overall to like 45th or top 50. It'll be fun to see where he goes, but he's a superstar. And as my 8-year-old niece mentioned today, he's getting better every single minute.
Wow, that's impressive. And by the way, we should, if we're going to call out all these awesome superstars, we probably should also mention Brady Tkachuk, who is also on fire. Like everyone is, right? 6 points his last 5 games. Tkachuk over a point per game pace also, which is something he's never done in his career. So yeah, it's a very exciting team. And I would also take Stützle. I remember back at the beginning of the year, we had so many discussions about like who's going to like not be good, I feel like a lot of not be good, but it was like, it felt like someone was going to be the odd man out, at least on the top power play, because they were like brought into Brinket and they brought in Giroux, and I feel like Stützle was our answer some of the time. And I don't know, we'd have to go back and listen to those episodes, but definitely I hope that we just said Stützle will be like among the top, because he really has been, but not like anyone else has been bad. I guess Batherson is probably the worst of all of these top end Sens lately. Okay, and he hasn't even been that bad. Brian, so I guess I wanted to keep doing defense. So well, I guess we can go to Arizona quickly. They've lost Chychrun, they've lost Gostisbehere. So now I guess it's the Juuso Välimäki show. He's running the top power play still like he was before the trade deadline, but it's the top power play on a team who has Clayton Keller, has Nick Schmaltz. Actually, the power play itself doesn't look that bad. Like Barrett Hayton's been really good lately. Travis Boyd is another person. So I don't know. Is Välimäki, like, I'm not saying Välimäki is going to be anywhere on this list, but is he like rosterable? Is he like a watch list to you? Or is he just like, I don't even care?
Man, like I'm looking at the depth chart in Arizona tonight, and you've got like Keller, Hayton, Schmaltz, and then like it's really a bunch of guys. Like you've got Matthias Michelli, Lawson Krause, like those are the headliners on this roster. And on defense, you got like we're familiar with JJ Moser because he's had some fancy relevance this year. But aside from that, Elon, none of these guys, like I imagine I'm not going to put you. I would fail to name most of them. It's like, oh, he's in Carolina, or nope. I'd be like, oh, he's in Arizona, or oh, he's an NHL player. Would be my reaction to most of the decor and the bottom six. So Valimaki has his work cut out for him. But hey, a power play is a power play, and Keller, Hayton, Schmaltz have all been fantastic lately. So Valimaki playing on a power play with them, there's hope that he could produce somewhat. But I would put him. I'd put him below Klingberg. I'd put him below Gostisbehere. I would put Valimaki above Tyson Barrie, though, in our D rankings.
Okay, that seems fair. I guess I'll mention a name. I don't know why. Connor Mackey. They just got him in a trade from Calgary. I think Connor Mackey used to be a prospect. I feel like it was a name I'd heard of at some point. So whatever.
That's how I feel about most of this Coyotes. Like when I said they are a bunch of guys, like it is a bunch of players who I'm like, yeah, I think like John Sebastian Dea is on there too. It's like, yeah, I've seen his name on a jersey before. Connor Mackey, undrafted, 26 years old, out of college, has never.
I don't know why I heard his name.
Has been like semi-successful defensively in the AHL with like 52 points in 80 career games. So that's not bad for a defenseman, I guess.
All right.
Elon, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, I think, are we out at the... Oh, I got one for you, Brian. Filip Hronek is over to Vancouver. He's injured right now, so we can't like look into an immediate impact. So probably not even worthwhile for fantasy. He might be back before the end of the year. Clearly, the Canucks are doing this more as a long-term acquisition, and they paid a big price, right? A first this year, conditional first, and a second this year to get Filip Hronek. And I know like Vancouver has been trying to like shore up that D for a while, and generally not doing a great job doing that by signing Tyler Myers, like trading for OEL, whatever. So now they have Hronek. I was like really shocked when I saw this because I've never really thought of Hronek as like such an amazing player. I remember when he was scratched last year. This year, he definitely had his moments where he was doing really well, like in terms of fantasy. But then some of the patrons were telling me how like there's some advanced stats that have said he's like been having a really amazing year, though apparently he's like fallen off more recently. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on, like, to me, it seems like a crazy price to pay, but maybe I'm dumb and maybe Hronek will actually be what the Canucks need to finally become a good team.
Well, that's the key. Like, I think he's a good player, and I think a team could use him given like the state, like at the right moment. But I don't know if this is the right moment for Vancouver. And like a lot of head scratching has been done about this, and I'm not going to pretend that I have anything more unique to say than what everybody else has when criticizing exactly what's going on. Like, is Hronek gonna hurt the tank when he's healthy? I guess he'd be a good acquisition for a playoff team or a team working towards like on their way on the upwards trajectory. But Vancouver doesn't seem like, they seem like confused in Vancouver. Like they have some awesome cornerstone pieces to build around. You've got Demko, you've got Pedersen, you've got Hughes, you've got Miller, you've got Kuzmenko, you kind of have Brock Besser, whether or not you can get something out of him, but they don't have the rest of the pieces or puzzle near complete. Like I half wonder if Vancouver looks at Edmonton and they're like, well, we have the same number of pieces as them, but so like, let's go for it, or let's try and keep this team competitive. But none of those pieces in Vancouver, as good as they might be, none of them are McDavid and Draisaitl. And like, even with them, Edmonton struggles. Like no one should follow the Edmonton model. So anyway, I don't get it, Elon. And I think, unfortunately, this hurts Hronek's value because he saw some stretches on the top power play in Detroit, and he is seems extremely unlikely to see any top power play time in Vancouver.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a hit for him when he comes back. And since we're on the Canucks, you mentioned Demko as one of the core pieces. Demko finally back with the team after missing so much time. But yeah, he played against Minnesota and had a really good game on Thursday. He stopped 34 of 36 in an unfortunate loss where Vancouver lost 2-1. Definitely not Demko's fault. And then he was in the net for that game we talked about where the Leafs couldn't get much by him on Saturday. It was 4-1 for Vancouver, and Demko stopped 36 of 37. A fantastic game. I don't want to like get ahead of myself here, but like going into the season, we did our Schmore goalies board episode and we put Demko in tier 2 as one of the top goalies that you can rely on. And he totally let us down, made us look like real schmohawks. I don't know, real dum-dums.
I've never heard that word before.
It was from like Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think Larry David said that his dad like used that word a lot. Hopefully it's not like an offensive word to anybody, but anyway, Demko's finally looking good. So maybe we were right all along. Brian, do you think that tier 2 Thatcher Demko is back? Or do you think this is like, don't get ahead of yourself? But either way, it doesn't really matter because it's trying to predict goalies. But I'm sure people who drafted him and now had him now are excited to actually be getting something out of him finally.
Yeah, like I don't think we ever lost faith that Demko would show up. Remember, we were making comparisons to last season where he started really weak and then he found his game. But he was going longer, struggling this year than he did last year. And then he got hurt, so he couldn't find his game. I think Thatcher Demko is still in there. It's just a matter of how much of him we get to see. But he's anti-tank material as well. Like he stopped 70 of his last 7 threes. Like he stopped 70 of the last 73 shots he's faced. Demko putting up a combined 959 save percentage against Minnesota and Toronto. It's great to see him succeed. But in a league where you're looking for wins, I would still steer pretty clear of Demko. But in rates, especially like if you're just looking for like a start or 2 a week or like some guaranteed starts with some good chances at good rates, I think Demko has some value.
Okay. Hey, I think he can also get you some wins, like, because he's good. Like he's done it in the past, right? At Vancouver, that team that wasn't that good was still able to win and get far in the playoffs that one time because of Demko. And they do have like those high end guys, like you said. So, I mean, if he was available for agency, I would grab him. He's probably not, but if he was, I'd get him. Anyway, Brian, I think that's it for defensemen. I think actually I want you to like buzz me or something if I mention another defenseman's name for the rest of the show. I want to see if we could actually do a whole other hour not mentioning one D-man, but we do have a ton of other players to talk about that are forwards and goalies. And so I think now's a good time to take a break. And then we're going to be back for part 2, which I think is going to be a ton of fun because there were so many more trades that we have to get to. So hopefully you've enjoyed this first half of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast. If you are not sure how to get part 2, make sure you're subscribed. That's how podcasts work. You subscribe, you just get new episodes downloaded automatically, helps us out. And that you should already have part 2 available in your feed. We'd love your support, 5-star review, become a patron, but I guess we'll get to all that at the end of part 2. So thanks everyone, and we will talk to you soon. All right. Anything before we continue?
No, I'm seeing that I'm like kind of creeping back into my couple matchup, but it's not going to happen because Teravainen had a hat trick and Carter Hart had his first good game in like a month. I
guess it was bound to happen eventually.
I
mean, they're playing. Who are they playing? Like,
no, they're playing Detroit, who
so it makes sense.
Needs a win, but yeah,
but Detroit sucks. No,
actually,
Detroit
they're in tank. They're in tank mode. But I have. What are you gonna do? If McKinnon goes off without Makar, I have a chance.
Okay, I'll be rooting for you. But okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I'm just like,
you're doing a great job.
I wish I could just let go. I wish I could
can.
Just let
you
go.
will. You will once you lose, or if you win. Then
well,
you'll be
I was hoping I would have already lost.
Well, that's a weird.
If you're gonna lose, if I'm gonna lose, I want to lose.
Okay, well,
none of this fake losing.
You're a winner at podcasting. So
am I?
I mean, I thought it was a good show.
Thanks. Me too.
I think we could stop right now and people could be like, oh, they did a good show.
Yeah.
They'd probably be like, why didn't they talk about Timo Meier or something?
Okay. Anyway, well, okay.
I'm gonna start with the Kings, by the way. All right.
Okay. I appreciate that. Heads up. Don't ask. Well, okay. You can ask me any question for this.
I'm going to go in order now in the document for the rest of the show. So there you go.
Okay. I will try my best to figure out where that leaves us.
Okay. Starting at number 4.
Yeah. I found it. Okay. Yes.
Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of the March 5th, 2023 episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, a show mainly about fantasy hockey, but also about friends, vibes, everything that makes us have a good time in life, enjoy the good things, including watching our favorite players switch teams, as we've had a very exciting trade deadline. And Brian and I have been breaking down all of the news and the notes and the ups and the downs and everything that we need to know to be successful in our fantasy leagues going into hopefully our fantasy playoffs. Brian, we had a blast in part 1 talking about every single defenseman, I think, that's had their value go up or down. Did you end up giving an answer, by the way, on Bouchard versus Chychrun, who you'd rather have on your couple team if you could only have one?
I gave it preemptively that I still want Bouchard,
okay.
above all. Who is behind Bouchard?
I guess, well, is it Chychrun or is it Sandin? I think you had Sandin there.
Yeah, Sandin, or you know what? I think I might take Chychrun ahead of Sandin just because like the floor is pretty low for Sandin, lower than Chychrun. So how about I'll slot Chychrun in there? And I've got to buzz you because you're already talking about defensemen when you said you wouldn't.
Okay, well, that was just the recap. That was the recap of part one. And then now we're going to start moving forward, and we've got a ton more to talk about. So let's just dive right in, okay, pal? And we can start over in LA. We were talking about goalies with Thatcher Demko. We had a little goalie swap here where the Kings made a trade with Columbus, where they acquired Joonas Korpisalo. They also got Gavrikov, who I retweeted from. Oh, Brian, we have a brand new account. I don't even know if I told you about this. At Game Day Stats NHL. Where we're basically we have at Game Day News NHL, where generally Shams and I are retweeting like news, news like injuries, like we don't really have like what if someone just had a good game, someone's doing, it doesn't feel like newsy, but it still feels like worth retweeting. So now we have Game Day Stats NHL for like interesting stats, and we retweeted something about Gavrikov and how big of an impact he's had since coming to LA. But anyways, he's like for fantasy, he's not going to be worth discussing, but I did want to shout his name up. But yeah, Korpisalo comes in. He played his first game for LA on Saturday, and he had himself a very good game in this win over St. Louis. He let in 2 goals, but it was on. I'm trying to like do this and bring up at the same time, make it sound so smooth. Yeah, 2 goals on 26 shots, so a .923 save percentage for Korpisalo, who's been having a great year in Columbus. Now he goes to a cup contender. I guess he's in a tandem with Phoenix Copley. We'll see for how long. Maybe one of them wins out, or maybe they're just happy to go 50-50. Again, it's like I always feel bad when I like throw to you asking you a goalie question because I know the answer is like who knows, but like my hunch I'll just say is I think Korpisalo is going to be like the game 1 starter in the playoffs for LA. So I'll throw that out there at least, and I think that also means he'll probably play more in the regular season. So what do you think, Brian? Has this like totally tanked Phoenix Copley's value, and should everyone be rushing to grab Korpisalo?
Just to like, why do you think Korpisalo has the upper hand here?
Yeah, I feel like he's like, first of all, been an NHL veteran for longer. Like he has more experience. I feel like he's, I think, having a better season overall. He's better save percentage. Just like, I don't know. I feel like Copley has been so good for LA, but that's been like compared to Jonathan Quick and compared to Cal Peterson. I think overall he hasn't been like, one of the top goalies in the league. And I think Korpisalo, I don't know. Again, it's just mostly hunches, but I guess those would be the main reasons: the experience and just the better numbers so far.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Like usually though, for me, the incumbent is the like the person who has the advantage, right? But I hear what you're saying. Like Korpisalo has been better this season, a 58% quality start percentage versus Copley's 51% quality starts. And that's really what like I'm looking at. If I want my goalie to give me a chance to win any given night. And so far that has been Korpisalo over Copley this year. And Copley continues to struggle. He had a moment a few weeks back where Copley strung 3 great starts together. But aside from that, he hasn't put up back-to-back average performances together since his debut run in early December. So like we were all wowed with Copley. He took the job from Quick, but I think one of the only reasons he's held it is because Quick was not competition. And this is a hole that LA desperately needed to plug. And that's why I think Korpisalo has a shot here. My guess, Elon, is a little opposite to yours. It's that Copley is still going to be the Kings guy. He's been there all season, but they know he needs rest. And maybe he's best when sharing the duties. So what I could see happening is Copley and Korpisalo go 50-50 for a bit. And then one of them, I assume just one of them, emerges. Like it's going to be an open competition heading into the playoffs, but the Kings are also going to have to go with a hot hand until then to, make the playoff picture as positive as possible for the team. And if you're asking me who's going to have the hot hand through the rest of the season, I will guess Korpisalo. So I think Copley has like the slight leg up to begin with, but I think that leg up could disappear pretty quick. And I think it's going to be a game by game thing. So if you're looking, like we had a patron asking in our Discord server who like how to rank the LA goalies. And I think if you're relying on an LA goalie to give you volume, I have a feeling you're not going to get that through the rest of the stretch.
Yeah, you're probably right. I have a hunch that Korpisalo might be worth a hold for now, but definitely we'll have more data and that'll help us out for sure. But good job, Phoenix Copley, for keeping the Kings in the playoff race this whole time. So Jonathan Quick went to Columbus and he quickly got flipped to Vegas for Michael Hutchinson. And Jonathan Quick played today, his first game, not as an LA King. Very interesting. And he got the win, which is good. But Vegas was up 3-0. The Montreal almost came back to tie it in the third. So Quick ended the game, stopping only 25 of 28, so sub 900 save percentage, which is generally what we see from Jonathan Jonathan Quick. I think that maybe he was like, oh my God, am I going to get a shut going to the third period with a shutout? Like, oh, this isn't the old me. I'm back. And then all of a sudden, Mike Matheson and Alex Belzile and Raphael Harvey Pinard wanted to, knock him down a notch or two. But hey, he got the win. That's what matters. Moving forward, though, like, I guess I could ask you Quick versus Hill, just like I asked you about Korpisalo versus Copley. But before I ask you that, I have to obviously bring up the fact that Adin Hill had an insane game versus New Jersey on Friday. He stopped 47 of 50, and all the tweets I was seeing were just like Hill is like oh my God, Hill, I'm running out of things to say about how amazing Hill is looking in this game. Like New Jersey is obviously a super strong team, and Vegas was able to win, I'd imagine almost completely because of Adin Hill's heroics. He's also had like 2 great games before it, and like Jonathan Quick is Jonathan Quick. So I think if you have Adin Hill and you were like, now like he's not going to be the starter even though Brossoit is injured, I think you're fine. Like I think Adin Hill is someone who I'd rather have than like Korpisalo or Copley or Quick.
Yeah, well, he's most likely to see volume down the stretch. Like, hey, what a story from Adin Hill. I picked up another reason I'm going to lose this week, by the way, which I know is everybody's favorite topic, is Adin Hill being healthy and Laurent Brossoit not. I wasted a move picking up Brossoit for this week, thinking he'd split with Hill, and my opponent has Adin Hill, and Adin Hill has been phenomenal this season. The chances of him stringing together the 3 starts he did this week, in my mind, were so low. I was actually like, oh, this is good. Like, Hill's going to get all these starts. He's not going to do anything. He's going to waste a roster spot for my opponent. No, Adin Hill's been incredible. Since the game before Logan Thompson's injury, Adin Hill is 5-1-0 with a .926 save percentage. And yeah, he killed me this week, especially stopping 47 of 50 to steal a win against the Devils in a game that the Devils were clearly very motivated and excited to win and perform. I've never seen a run like this from Adin Hill before, and it's a small one, but even that is saying something, right, about where my expectation was and what an achievement I think this is for Adin Hill. So I expect him to see volume down the stretch. I think Quick has to be plan B, and with a healthy Brossoit, maybe Quick becomes plan C, and with a healthy Logan Thompson, maybe Quick becomes plan D. He did all right today. Had a near collapse in the third against Montreal today. And like, there is a chance that Jonathan Quick still has something in there to give, but he's not somebody I have a whole lot of confidence in. That said, I don't have a ton of confidence in Adin Hill either. I just assume that one of the other goalies gets healthy and steps up before the wheels totally come off Hill and before Jonathan Quick can put in enough performances to really make a case to deserve more starts.
Yeah, I know you've been like kind of like not into Hill like all season long, like I guess, and maybe for good reason. Overall, he's up to a .914 save percentage now. Maybe he just like needed some chance to. Yeah, he's doing good, and like maybe some goalies like need an opportunity to like get some experience in and sort of get on a roll a little bit. So I wouldn't totally give up. He's only 26 years old, and I'm pretty into him right now. And I think Vegas is a good team potentially if they can get some good goaltending, and I think they're getting it from him. So I don't like. Yeah, I guess you're right. It's a fair point, Elon. Like last year, Hill played as many games and had a .906. The year before that, he played 19 games with Arizona. He's had a decent career. Maybe, I don't know why. I think I've been down on Adin Hill just because he's sort of had opportunities but never been able. But also on like bad teams. Like I feel like they must make a difference to like be able to play on a team that could actually support you somewhat.
Yeah, I'm just looking at his career numbers, like compared to expected. Oh, this is why I've been down on him, because like he's always played a fair deal below expected, even when his raw save percentage is good.
And I know that stat in
theory. But this year he's even. This year he's like playing like just a smidge above expected.
And I don't know, Brian, like tell me if this, I'm totally out to lunch here and like sound like an old school person. Like I know that stat the in theory is supposed to be about how, we could take away the, effect of the team and just be like, how well would an average goalie have done versus like, with the same exact workload. And so it's, it doesn't matter if he was on a bad team or a good team, but I feel like I would be surprised if it still doesn't play a part, like it's hard to totally measure how tricky it is. And I just think like goalies in general on San Jose, like, don't do very well. And I can't imagine they're all just like below expected. Like, I feel like James Reimer's goals like against above expected will go up if he goes to like a good team, just a hunch.
I think that's the whole point about expected goals. It accounts for that. I mean, I thought you were going to make the argument that it doesn't account for like context. Right. Like this is a new team and a new system, and maybe he'll like just works better behind certain teams and systems than that. I would buy into that. argument, even though the expected goals, I suppose. But it's the same way for forwards, right? Like some forwards are measured in expected goals, but expected goals doesn't really describe their goal scoring ability. Some players can routinely underperform their expected goals, and other players routinely overperform it. So there definitely are special cases.
And I guess, like, not to like hold a huge candle to Adin Hill, like I don't have any vested interest in him or anything, but I guess also the fact that he's been like sub 25 years old, like his whole run in Arizona, and then like
sub 25 years old. I love the way you framed that.
Yeah, he's been a youth, but now he's turning into a man over on Vegas. So that can make a difference.
This is about the age. We see goalies who look like they can't hack it in the NHL from a young age. This is about when, like, mid to late 20s or early 30s, where it's like, oh, wait, maybe they can play. Goaltending is a funny position.
Yeah. But you know what else is a funny position? I don't know. I was going to try to do, but anyways, I want to talk about Barbashev. Okay. As a forward, a forward is also a funny position, and that someone like Ivan Barbashev can be on St. Louis and not be super impactful. Then all of a sudden you get on a line with Jack Eichel and Jonathan Marchessault, and all of a sudden things change. And Brian, another good game for Barbashev today. He had 2 goals for Vegas, both at even strength. I know when I talked about him with Shams on Short Shifts, Shams mentioned how he's not getting any power play, which, yeah, that would be helpful, but he still now has 2 straight multi-point games, 5 points in his last 5 points in his last 5 points in his last 3 games. That's 5 points, I guess, in 4 games playing with Vegas. So it's obviously a really good spot. Playing on the top line is good. Plus, in your multi-category leagues, you must be drooling at today's stat line with 2 goals, 6 hits, 2 blocks. We helped you across the board. I'll point it out for you, Brian. Those 2 goals were on 2 shots, and that's not something we can expect to continue. But he's on the top line, right? So, I mean, you do expect that Eichel and Marchessault are going to get points, and Barbashev will be there. So definitely not saying that I'm like so excited. And sorry, one sec. Definitely not saying that he's like a season-long hold and like you need to drop everyone to get Ivan Barbashev. But I think if he was a free agent for me, I would be becoming quite interested with this run he's on.
Yeah, I was actually hoping that Barbashev would only get the 1 goal today, and then he'd be up to 4 points, and I could call that a Barbashev quartet. But he was on the top power play on Friday, and also saw some time playing with Eichel with the man advantage today. And like it had 4 hits and 3 blocks against New Jersey. I haven't checked his peripherals today, but it feels like Vegas would be really happy if Barbashev continued to not look out of place alongside Eichel. They've been trying, like, we've heard the names Mike Amadio and Paul Cotter. We've seen a lot of line shuffling, and if Barbashev just like drops in there and it works, I don't see Vegas really wanting to mess with that. So he's in a really good spot, especially if the points keep coming. And like you, Elon, I would be going out and grabbing Ivan Barbashev. I, of course, always check the schedule first and make sure he's actually going to play for you and that it's useful for you, and like given where you are in the standings and the upcoming schedule. But yeah, Barbashev is somebody that you should definitely consider rostering.
And yeah, on the other side, I guess on the third side of this trade with, Vegas and LA and Columbus, we do get to the Blue Jackets, who now don't have Korpisalo. They don't have Quick. They do have Elvis Merzlikins. And I'll be honest, I felt a little FOMO. I was thinking of grabbing Merzlikins I saw Columbus was playing Friday, Saturday. I thought I had a hunch that Merzlikins would probably play both of those games because, like, are they really going to play Hutchinson? They'll have to at some point, right? But anyways, then someone else took Merzlikins before I had a chance. And I was like, oh, I blew it. Typical me this season, like always being a step behind. But I don't know. Maybe I dodged a bullet there. So he had an okay game on Friday against Seattle, letting in 3 goals on 34 shots, but not as good of a game on the Saturday versus Ottawa, letting in 4 goals on only 23 shots. So like an 826 save percentage in that game, just brutal. Yeah, I don't know. Like Merzlikins is like going to be a volume starter now. They have no other choice. I just wonder, like, how valuable will he be? Like I'm looking at his game log here, and you have to scroll back all the way till January 8th to see a game with fewer than 3 goals against. It's almost all 3s, and then a 4, 5, and a 6 sprinkled in there. So not pretty, but yeah, at least you'll see lots of shots against.
Yeah, well, exactly. So it depends on what your format is. Goals against average, Merzlikins is going to be in tough, but for saves and wins, Merzlikins is going to be in tough, but for saves and save percentage, Merzlikins could reward you. He's in like a John Gibson situation now, right? Like Elon, you said in 11 straight games, Merzlikins had 3 goals against or more. But over that stretch, he's averaged nearly 35 shots against. So if you stop 32 of those 35 shots. If you give up 3 goals facing 35, that's a 914 save percentage, which is like almost 10 save points above league average. Merzlikins also just came off before that Ottawa game, which didn't go well. He's playing the second half of back-to-back. But before that, he had a 3-game stretch where Merzlikins faced 119 shots against, and he let in 3 goals in each of those games and had a 926 save percentage to show for it, and only lost 1 of those games in regulation. So Merzlikins' numbers are likely not going to be pretty, but like a John Gibson, I think that's the class he's in now, right? Unlikely to win, likely to give up a bunch of goals. But for volume, if you're getting points for saves and potentially save percentage, Elvis could help you.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. No, for sure. You're right. Like he's going to have a good save percentage. Yeah. Just if you're in a categories league where you like have to worry about even save percentage, I'd be nervous. Goals against average for sure. I'd be nervous. Wins, I don't think he's going to help you very much, but yeah, like starting goalie is hard to find. So if it was Cupful, I would probably grab him, but I'd still be nervous.
Yeah, I will add, I think, is it Columbus just plays twice next week? So if you are thinking of adding him, like now is probably not the time.
I actually brought that up on the matchup maximizer yesterday, but then I like corrected myself quickly thinking like, most goalies only play 2 times in a week. Like for a forward, I'm with you, but for a goalie, it's like usually the back, if the team plays 3 times, usually the backup plays 1 anyway. So maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Fair point.
So on Saturday, like every team plays. So probably
it's Tuesday it's Tuesday and Saturday. So if you're adding him to an existing cabal of goaltenders. Yeah, then it won't
work out. Let's go now to the New York Rangers, who probably like on paper look like the big winners of the trade deadline, right? Because they got both Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko. Of course, the results matter, though. We look at the names of the players and we're super excited. But unfortunately, the Rangers keep losing. They lost to the Sens on Thursday. Then they lost to Boston on Saturday. And to be fair, we've already talked about how awesome the Sens are lately. Boston is probably the top team in the league. So maybe I don't want to read too much into it. But looking at the players, Patrick Kane, now 2 games with the Rangers, no points. He's been on the top line with Panarin and Trocheck. He's been on the top power play. He's in a good spot, right? He's checking all those boxes. All we need now is for him to deliver. And he was delivering in Chicago at the end of that stint on his old, he was delivering. Sorry. Like he went on a crazy run at the end of his stint in Chicago after having a disappointing season overall. Patrick Kane was looking like the Kane of old. He was like scoring almost every game. Now he goes to the Rangers. Should we be worried about this slow start on the Rangers, that maybe Patrick Kane will just kind of go back to being what we saw for the rest of the season? Or is his like spot just like too good to not just like start going off in a crazy way?
Sorry, just like a little off. Hang on, let me just pull up Kane's
no problem.
Sorry. Now that I've stopped, I will make sure I'm 100% ready to start. Okay. Kane was on a heck of a run on his way out of Chicago with 7 goals in his last 4 games in Chicago on 17 shots. So like got super hot. None of those goals came on the power play. I'm not sure if any were on an empty net. That seems unlikely. I'm not sure how many empty nets Chicago has gotten to face this year. The thing with Kane is it's hard to really gauge where he's at in his career because I was talking about expected goals and whatever, but advanced stats have not always measured his full impact because he is such a great passer and it's not all captured in the way that advanced stats are captured with the data that's available. So it's hard to say whether Patrick Kane is washed or if he just continues to be underappreciated by the metrics that we generally use to measure hockey players. I mean, it's not a great sign that Kane seemed like I didn't even notice him. I watched his first game in New York. He seemed like a non-factor, but he's seen a lot of minutes, including 9.5 minutes on the power play over his 2 games as a Ranger so far. And I think Patrick Kane is probably working out how to fit in on the whole, right? Like he's used to a system that basically revolves around him at 5-on-5 and even strength. So I'm not surprised if there's a bit of an adjustment period here for Patrick Kane. And, I wonder how great he'll be. And I've expressed caution already through the year that we all know he's not what he once was. And we've had this conversation a couple times, Elon, where I'm like, if he goes to another team, I don't know that makes me any more interested. And you're like, oh, but he's Patrick Kane and Chicago sucks, so he's in a better place. But, this has been an ongoing thing. And I think basically he's going to look bad until he doesn't. Like, I could see him catching fire too. I think the tricky thing with Patrick Kane is, like, in shallower leagues, figuring out where he sits and how patient you can be if he's approaching bottom roster status, which he very well could be. But so long as the minutes are still coming in the power play deployment, like, I'd be willing to wait at least another couple games before really starting to think seriously about letting him go.
Yeah, noted Bruins fan Andy here in the chat is saying that, I guess he watched the game, like, that Kane was a non-factor against the Bruins. 2 of his turnovers led directly to goals. So that's obviously not great.
He's a factor then.
Well, yeah, he's a factor in the negative way. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, one player that he can try to model his entrance to the Rangers after is Vladimir Tarasenko, who also started slow on his new team, but now has 2 goals and 3 assists in his last 3 games. And Tarasenko hasn't even been on the top power play, but who needs it? He's like Claude Giroux, right? He's going to produce with whatever time he gets. And yeah, Tarasenko looking really good right now. So we'll see if maybe Patrick Kane can follow suit. But I agree with you, Brian. It's really hard to say since we've never seen him outside of Chicago. We don't really know, like, is he good or is he not good? Except for, I guess, Andy watched the game, said he wasn't good. So there's one data point for you right there.
I trust Andy as a data point for sure. But like you said, Vladimir Tarasenko offers some kind of, like, yeah, there's a template for this. Although he was really good in his first game as a Ranger. But look, these things take time and they're really hard for us to project too. You've got a player who's been in one place forever, moving to a new location, taking on a new role. There's a lot of moving parts. So unfortunately, I'm just going to be honest here and say I don't have much to offer, except we know the player Patrick Kane can be. I think we still know how great he can be. And I expect to see that at some point, at least in spurts during his time as a Ranger.
Yeah, okay. So we talked about Arizona and how they're down a couple defensemen who I won't name, and Bjugstad. And we talked about how their lineup looks pretty shaky. Another team with a lineup that looks like pretty off is Kane's former team now in Chicago. So they've lost Kane, they've lost Domi. You'll buzz me up. They lost Jake McCabe. They lost Sam Lafferty. Arizona still has a good first line. Chicago has nobody. They just but they do. Okay, forget what I said. Okay, but I'm not going to ask you about defensemen. I was going to say, Arizona has a good first line. Chicago has basically Seth Jones, and that's probably it in terms of anyone you'd be interested in, like, including the goalies, I guess. Like, Petr Mrazek, I will say, has been okay lately, which surprises me, especially with this team, and also the fact that he's Petr Mrazek. So maybe, again, kind of like with the Merzlikins thing, if you need volume, Mrazek could be an option, a scary option, but an option. As far as the forwards, like, I could read you these lines. I don't even know what's the first, like, if I go just by minutes in that game against Nashville where they lost on Saturday, in that case, this can't actually be what we would call the top line.
Read me these lines like they're a bedtime story.
Okay. Wait, I don't know what that means. Like, is that like in a sing-songy voice?
It's open to interpretation.
Jason Dickinson, Anders Bjork, and no, I can't. We don't have time.
That's a lullaby, not a bedtime story.
Okay. Jason Dickinson, Anders Bjork, and Mackenzie Antwist. It's kind of like my opening for part 2.
Yeah, and voice. It is putting me to sleep like a bedtime story would.
Tyler Johnson, Taylor Radish, and Cole Gutman. I guess, is that the first line, or Athanasiou, Kurashev, and Reichel?
That's the first line.
I guess so. Kyra, Kachuk, and Joey Anderson. Well, they didn't play that much in the last game, but yeah, those do, like, if you look at the top power play, I guess those would be that's how we'll decide who might be interested in Chicago. Tyler Johnson, Athanasiou, Taylor Radish, and Philip Kurashev, and then Seth Jones. Look, like, Lucas Reichel is a high pedigree prospect. He is called up now. He'll get a bit of a run. He did get an assist in this game against Nashville, which is kind of interesting. I will say Tyler Johnson. I said this on Matchup Maximizer yesterday because Chicago actually has a good schedule next week. I think it's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday to start the week. Tyler Johnson's been on a decent enough, like, he's having a couple multi-point games, like a multi-point game a week. I don't know, whatever. But he always gets hurt. Is there anyone, like, we can just move on? You're trying so
hard to add value to these guys. Like, I could say Andreas Athanasiou has points in 3 of 4, but he barely shoots. Kurashev occasionally shoots. Lucas Reichel has, like, an unknown entity, and maybe he's interested, but I really don't think there's much. Like, there's even less here in Chicago than there is in Arizona, except on the blue line. Elon, a piece of trivia for you: Seth Jones, more meaningful than the other. He has scored 2/3 of Chicago's goals in March. Literally, wow. two out of 3 goals scored by Chicago have been from Seth Jones. 2 goals on 8 shots, though, in his last 2 games. And Elon, I don't know if you remember, back in January, he was on like a 27 or like some garbage pace. And you were like, we talked about, is it time to drop Seth Jones? And I was like, no, I don't think it's time to drop Seth Jones. And since then, Elon, sometimes I got to pat myself on the back here, to my own horn. Seth Jones is on a 60-point pace since January when we had that conversation. He's shooting 10% to get there, 7 goals on like 70 shots. But still, like, that's not so outrageous. And even without those, he'd still be on a good pace. Of course, the job is harder now without Patrick Kane and Max Domi there. So we'll see. But I still think you at least hang on and see what he can do. And then you've got, you mentioned Petr Mrazek, who's been well above average in 4 of his last 5, 920 save percentage in his last 5 games. Only 2 wins to show for it, though. And they were in top level opponents. But at least Mrazek has worked his way back into like a spot start discussion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Brian, I want to talk now about the other big-ish name that left Chicago. We'll get to him and a bunch of more players in just a sec, but let's take a quick break. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, Brian, so I will okay, we are back. I will end the suspense. Yeah, let's talk about Max Domi, I guess, who's been having such a huge year with Chicago. Things really clicked for him there, but obviously it made perfect sense for Chicago to want to, dump him and get what they can for him. And who knows, maybe he'll re-sign as a free agent in the offseason. But yeah, he ends his tenure in Chicago with 49 points in 60 games. So a really great season for Domi. Now he goes to Dallas, okay? And he joins Evgeny Dodonov as a new acquisition for the Stars, get a chance to make a playoff run here. So Domi's first game for Dallas was against Colorado, so tough opponent, but not too tough because Dallas was able to beat Colorado 7-3. You think when a team scores 7 goals, you're like, all right, let me see what Domi was able to do. Unfortunately, not too much. Only 2 shots and no points. He was playing on a line with Sagan and Marchment, and yeah, nothing to show for any of those 7 goals. Also, Domi was getting second power play. I guess I'll lump Dodonov in to this discussion and say that he was playing on a line with Jamie Benn and Wyatt Johnston. Dodonov also pointless in this game versus Colorado, which is surprising. Who got the points in that game? I guess it was mostly Hintz and Pavelski and Robert. Well, Robertson had a huge game. He's insane. But okay, so yeah, basically the top line I think carried the team pretty much in that win. But Dodonov beforehand had 3 points in his first 3 games with Dallas. So if you see a Domi and or a Dodonov in your free agency, are you interested in one of these guys, or do they just basically become now like Mason Marchments, basically like, players who could have been good on other teams? Now they're just depth pieces and not someone who will do too much.
Yeah, I think there's not a whole lot of value. Like, when's the last time you really saw value from anybody not on Dallas's top line? It's been a long, long time, Elon. Like, Tyler Seguin has been the closest thing to it. And we've been like, this has been a pretty successful season for Seguin. And he's on a 53-point pace. And that's thanks to him having 6 points in his last 6 games, including an 8-shot outing, which was nice to see. But really, there's not a whole lot of upside. Like, the only one with upside off Dallas's top line is, believe it or not, and you should believe it by now, is Jamie Benn. And that's because he's become this like power play specialist where he's up to 20 power play points on the season. He's still putting up points like outside of power play situations, but he also has 3 short-handed points too. So things are going well on special teams for Jamie Benn this year, and that's why he's rosterable, but no one else really is on a regular basis. Like Tyler Seguin, depending on your league, of course. Joe Pavelski, remember we said like we'd talk about him when we're like getting really concerned. We didn't have to. He's got 5 points now in his last 4 games, thanks to a pair of 2-point nights in his last 2 games against Colorado and Chicago. So just wanted to close the loop on that. I'm really relieved because I wasn't sure what I was going to say if Pavelski continued to be cold. But yeah, all this to say, Max Domi, Evgeny Dodonov, not on the top line, not interesting to me. And I think for Max Domi especially, I think he is the guy or nothing at all. And I imagine that's why he's rumored to return to Chicago, to want to come back to Chicago next year, so he could go back and be the number 1 center he dreams of being. And, he showed he could be half decent at the job when he's really given like a long leash and not saddled with too much defensive responsibility. So we'll see what that means for his draft value next year, or probably more like streaming value next year. But while in Dallas, I'm not that into Domi or Dodonov.
Okay, yeah. Another team that, by the way, unloaded a lot of their players is Detroit, right? They sent Bertuzzi away. Verana's gone. Not that he was playing. Hronek, like we discussed. Going into this week, Detroit had a 5-game week. And so I'm sure a lot of people were rushing to grab different Red Wings. in the end, I don't know. Maybe this is like a valuable lesson. Like maybe you don't need to jump on these teams with 5 games. Like looks like there was no one who had more than 2 points in the 5 games. So I don't know, for whatever it's worth. It didn't end up being too exciting of a week for any Detroit Red Wing player. And I don't think we're going to be seeing many exciting weeks moving forward because they've gotten rid of a lot of their players. Like, unfortunately for the fans, I guess they'll have to wait another year. At one point, it was looking like maybe they could take a run at the playoffs. Like you said, Brian, I guess those 2 losses to Ottawa put them into seller mode, and hopefully they're happy with the returns they got. They got a first for Bertuzzi, I know. And we just talked about the great return for Hronek. So definitely, I guess for Detroit, the future has been exciting for a while now. Maybe at some point people will be excited to see when that will become the present. But yeah, not this year.
Exactly. Yeah, I think anybody looking for big performances out of Detroit the rest of the year, you're looking at Dylan Larkin. And I don't know, Lucas Raymond could be okay. David Perron is like on and off the top power play.
Like only in the deepest of leagues, honestly, for me. Like right now, even also Lucas Raymond. Like I'm not interested. Maybe a cupful like fringe.
Same. Yeah, exactly. Like good schedule, maybe a 1-game stream. But I honestly, I don't think. Like even like I'd say Wallman has been doing better than Seider lately. Like Seider's been cold. I want Dylan Larkin, and it's really hard for me to endorse another forward in Detroit right now.
Yeah, and of course the big name that left is Tyler Bertuzzi, who was traded for a first to Boston, also a fourth. So Taylor Hall is injured, and it looks like Bertuzzi kind of slid into the Hall spot on the third line, playing with Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick, and also Bertuzzi was on the second power play. So yeah, it's not a great spot. Like Taylor Hall hasn't been that exciting this year. He did get an assist in this game against the Rangers that we talked about before. 1 shot though. I don't know. Seems to like, is Bertuzzi just basically Hall for now, which is like
I think
fringe
so.
rosterable?
Yeah, he's a third liner on like the Bruins the third line that I think they use. Like they're going to be tough to play against. They're going to wear you down. They're going to grind you down. Maybe they'll get, a goal here or there. But on the whole, yeah, I'm not expecting this to be a place from which Bertuzzi can produce a whole lot of offense. His value goes down from having been a top power play and often top line player in Detroit to third line, second power play, which is, I'd say like he's in an even worse position than like it makes me think of Philip Hedl, right? Who's third line, second power play and had some value every so often. So I could see that happening for Bertuzzi too. But I see even less or similar or less opportunity to produce for Bertuzzi compared to someone like Philip Hedl.
Yeah, and like I'd say maybe at some point he gets a shot on the top power play. Like who knows? He's been good as a net front guy in the past, but at the same time, it's like why?
But for who? Yeah.
Well, like it's just Boston's so like they're rolling. Like someone has to like open up. Like maybe if there's an injury, but like for now, I don't see any reason why Boston needs to shake anything up. They're like the top team in the league for a reason. Then I guess another reason, by the way, that they're looking like a really strong team to continue being the top team is they picked up Dmitry Orlov from Washington, and Orlov is like on fire right now. 9 points in his last 4 games as a Bruin. He did nothing in his first game against Vancouver and then has made up for it since. Orlov. Oh, you're right. Oh, I should have brought him up then. I forgot that I had him on the list here. But okay, we have to talk about Orlov's hot streak, of course. Especially because all of a sudden, like his first couple games in the team, he wasn't even getting power play. All of a sudden, Orlov's sneaking into that second power play. Obviously, Charlie McAvoy is going to be tough to bump. And, obviously you're going to say that Orlov's not going to keep up this point pace. But like, if he's in free agency, are you rushing for him? Because like, even if he like, really?
I'm not.
Like, he could half this. He could get a quarter of these points and he's still worth rostering.
Yeah, and he could get an 1/8 of these points or 1/10 or like a 20th of these points, and that would be more in line with what Orlov has done through his career. Like he has been a 35-point defenseman. Like honestly, I see Hampus Lindholm here, like a very similar situation. Like you're on Boston, goals get scored on Boston. You can get in on a lot of them when you're on the ice a lot. And Orlov is going to be on the ice a lot. He's had over 20 minutes in 3 of his 5 games. I was actually expecting him to see even a little more ice time than that. And maybe he will over the course of his time there. Like in Washington, he was finishing actually like for the season. He's averaged just 21 minutes a night. But for the last couple months, he'd been playing like 24 minutes a night on average. I'm just sort of eyeballing that. But yeah, this can't continue for Orlov. But what a great way to start. 3 goals on his first 5 shots. which means that Orlov is a Bruin, which means Orlov doubled his season goal total in 2 games. And then but like you said, he added those 6 assists. So it's like, could he keep this up? I don't know, 100% points participation, 40% shooting, 14% teammate, like on ice shooting percentage. Yeah, I think this is just like a Hampus Lindholm situation where you can grab him and see how long this lasts.
He's rostered in all my leagues.
Yeah, I know. And we mentioned a while back, do you remember? We were like, yeah, you could drop Hampus Lindholm. He's done now. And then he went on another run. But since then, he went completely silent again. And somehow is on a 54-point pace for the season and has been on a pretty healthy run for a month now still. So Elon, yeah, maybe my take is bad here. Maybe I should revise it and say that, you said, should you rush to go grab Orlov? I'd say if you're looking to plug, I don't know, Elon, I have Jake Wallman in Cupful.
Yeah, I'd make that swap. That swap for sure.
Orlov is gone. I can't get him. But if I could, I would consider that.
I would easily do that because you're going to get points. Wallman's not going to get, he's good for periffs. He's not going to get points. Detroit's not going to score any goals.
Yeah.
No, Orlov's in a really good spot, but yeah, don't expect these theatrics, but I think he's definitely rosterable. He's very exciting to me anyways. Let's look at some more trades. I guess we're getting to the lower end here, so we can maybe just kind of rush through the final trades that might have some interest. Okay, for fantasy, Tanner Jeannot is someone who was really great last year with his high shooting percentage and all of his hits over in Nashville. Now he goes to Tampa for a first, a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth in various drafts coming up. So a huge price, but Tampa, the GM sort of justified it by saying, look, who knows if these picks will be good? Even further, who knows if these picks will end up being good in the window that we care about, which is while, Stamkos and Hedman, are around. Kucherov and Point, while their current core is around. So they're like, this is a piece that we think is going to help us during the time of this core. So that's why they picked up Jeannot. So we'll see how that works out for them. In the meantime, Tanner Jeannot himself is on the 4th line and not, I don't know. He does have he had 2 games in a row with an assist in each. No points. Well, I guess Tampa got shut out today against Carolina, so obviously no points. I can't imagine there's any interest here. No. Except for hits.
No, I mean, he's playing with Mikey Eyssimont and Nick Paul, which is such a Tampa line. This reminds me very much of Gaudreau, Coleman, Gord. You pick up a couple guys, you throw them on a line with someone you've already had for a bit. They all learned it's a very defensive focused line. And I think that's what Jeannot's role is going to be. Similar, we talked about Bertuzzi being on a checking line. I think Jeannot's line is going to be even less productive. He's seeing less ice time in Tampa so far than he was in Nashville. Sure, there's the potential that Jeannot can surprise and his line can surprise other teams some nights. But I don't think that we're looking at too great a situation. I mean, we weren't looking at Jeannot as a top 6 player in Nashville as being rosterable, and I don't think him moving to Tampa makes him any more rosterable. By the way, do we need to talk about how terrible the Lightning have been? You have mentioned it, you've touched on it, but they benched Kucherov and Point, and was it Stamkos?
Yeah, they had a game where they didn't play any of their good players. Yeah, for the last period.
They just benched them, and now they've lost 5 in a row for the first time since 2013-14. And I'm like, who was even on that team? That was Kucherov's rookie year. Marty St. Louis was traded to the Rangers in his age 38 season at the end of that year. Aside from him, Andre Palat led the team with 59 points in 81 games, followed by Phil Pula, Victor Hedman, Tyler Johnson, Teddy Purcell. Steven Stamkos was over a point per game as a 23-year-old, but he only played 37 games.
Okay. Thanks for the info. But yeah, let's talk about this season, I guess. And yeah, it's concerning, and also maybe potentially even more concerning. I'm seeing that Victor Hedman was injured in today's game against Carolina. Apparently he tried to come back and then left again. So I don't know, maybe that's a sign that it's not so serious. He was able to attempt to come back, but obviously that would be a big hit to Tampa's chances. I'm sure Leafs fans are, getting a little bit excited about maybe not this Hedman injury. That wouldn't be nice, but just this losing streak in general. And one player who jumps out to me is, now I have to ask if he's still worth holding, is Brandon Hagel, who's been great all year. We actually had a question from Thunder Down Under over on our Discord, where he was asking what to do with Hagel because he's ice cold right now. And yeah, Hagel is pointless now in 5 games. If you look at the lines today against Carolina, Hagel was playing with Nick Paul and Alex Killorn for a lot of the games, so not on the top line. Also, I'm seeing that Hagel wasn't on the top power play. Oh no, Killorn was there for a lot of the game with Stamkos, Kucherov, and Braden Point. I'm saying for a lot of game, it was like a minute and 47 seconds, but that was the majority of the power play time. So yeah, are we ready to tell people to drop Brandon Hagel? Like, obviously, these questions are tough because like the deployment could change, and all of a sudden he could heat up again. But I think if you're going for it now, you don't have time to wait, right? I'm not interested in him if he's not playing with one of the superstars.
Yeah, that's how it feels. And for most of the last 2 weeks, Hagel hasn't been on the top power play. And for most of the last 2 weeks, Hagel has not taken a shot. And in his last 6 games, Brandon Hagel has failed to register even a single shot on goal in 4 of them. So there's really zero value coming from Hagel. And like you said, Elon, the second deployment changes, Hagel could be valuable again, or likely I could even say will be valuable again. But if you can't afford to wait for that deployment to change, then you might have to go ahead and drop him and then deal with it later if you have feelings of regret. But if you're in an urgent or dire situation, it might be time to say goodbye to Hagel if you're not seeing deployment change ASAP.
Yeah, and maybe even if you're not in a dire situation, like maybe you're cruising into the playoffs, but you have some exciting. What if Rasmus Sandin is out there? We've been talking about how we're excited about him. Like, I'd rather just switch to the guy in a good situation right now, and rather than he at the end of the day, he is Brandon Hagel, right? He's not going to do well unless he's in a good spot. So it's not like someone you need to hold on to because like I think back to when Teuvo Teravainen was cold. And I know Brian, you said like you can let him go, and I in the back of my head I was just like, but he's Teuvo Teravainen, like he's really good, he's a good player. Like I don't feel that about Brandon Hagel. Maybe I will one day, but I feel like he's only good like for fantasy when he's in a good spot. So for what it's worth, I'd be okay to let him go. Maybe I'll eat my words. What other trades? We could have a Verana to St. Louis for peanuts. Like maybe we've talked too much about Verana for someone who hasn't done anything for a long time, but he was once very valuable in fantasy. And obviously St. Louis, even if they didn't give anything to get him in trade, like they obviously have some interest because they're taking on a contract, $5.25 million for a whole other season after this one. So I'd imagine the Blues are getting him because they want to play him. Otherwise, they wouldn't have traded for him. So I'm trying to convince myself by saying all this that I think Verana is someone I'm interested in. And I'm curious to see. Obviously, we'll see at game day lines like what his deployment is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a top 6 spot like he's had previous times in his career where he's been successful.
Yeah. I mean, like I don't know what to say about Jay. Yeah, honestly, like that is my full answer. Like let's see the guy. I think we're basically starting from zero with Verana. And I know we had like some discussion on our Discord server, our patrons only Discord server, where someone was like, why does everybody keep expecting Verana to do stuff? Like he did nothing in Detroit. He was bad in Washington for a bunch. And like, yes, that's true. But there was still that moment early in his career when he wasn't seeing a whole lot of minutes, but he was taking shots like nobody's business and taking quality shots. So that was exciting. And now that he's sort of, seems to have, I don't know if he's hit bottom or whatever, but I would like to see him get a fresh start. And I'm keeping an open mind. I'm sort of treating him like any other guy that we just haven't seen enough of, but we know has potential. Of course, he has had a few opportunities that he hasn't taken advantage of, and you can hold that against him. Or you can say, hey, I'm willing to give you a fresh start. I mean, hey, if Kasperi Kapanen can do pretty well with a fresh start in St. Louis, then why not Jacob Vrana? Yeah. And why not Jacob Vrana? Kasperi Kapanen, by the way, 2 goals on 9 shots so far as a St. Louis Blue. If I had to count how many games it took Kasperi Kapanen to record 9 shots on goal, I would have to go and combine his last 6 games as a Pittsburgh Penguin.
Wow. Okay. So maybe he's the one to look at if you want to go really deep. And yeah, Shams thankfully corrected me. So the contract was half retained by Detroit, but still St. Louis still is taking a $2+ million 2.6. Is that? I don't want to do the math on the fly here. So we'll see what happens. Also, we have like Pierre Engvall got traded to the Islanders, which generally I wouldn't bring up except for the fact that in the last game, Engvall played on the top line with Horvat and Anders Lee. He didn't do anything. And but the Islanders did win 4-1, so maybe he sticks on that line. So again, this is like super deep cut, but top liners aren't they don't grow on trees. So right now Pierre Engvall is one of them. Then we have Mikael Granlund was traded to Pittsburgh, which he's had fantasy value, of course, in the past. I think he was kind of interesting sometimes on Nashville, just getting good deployment, top power play. Now he's like a bottom sixer. He was playing with Jeff Carter and Danton Heinen in the last game, and also like not even power play, or maybe a little bit of power play time. So yeah, we'll see. Like if he doesn't bump like a Zucker, like I'm not interested. Like in the bottom six, Mikael Granlund, of course.
And he's not gonna. I don't think that's the reason, which is, kind of baffling because Mikael Granlund is not on a good contract for what he offers. Like he doesn't play offense. His defense isn't particularly good. And you're paying him $5 million for the next 2 years after this one. And I don't know that he's going to get any better. And he never really has been a whole lot better. But any fantasy value where we were like, oh yeah, Mikael Granlund, you could stream him in Nashville. He's playing in the top 6 on the top power play. He could go off or pick up a point or two on any given night, although that more often than not, that didn't happen for Granlund. Now it's almost certain that it will never happen. So his value's tanked. Elon, I love your optimism. Like that sounds cheeky.
I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic.
Oh, I was going to say about Pierre Engvall playing on the top line.
Oh, I'm not optimistic about him either.
Yeah, no, it sounded cheekier than I meant for it to be, but I think it's at least, if we're interested in guys like Matt Martin on the top line or JG Pageau on like somewhere in the middle 6, then I think it's at least worth thinking about Pierre Engvall if you're in the throes of desperation. It's at least good to know, Elon. I wouldn't have known Engvall was on the top line if you hadn't mentioned it tonight. So thank you for that.
Well, I mean, Shams and I are retweeting over at Game Day Lines all day long. We know who's on every line of every team. That's what we do. But yeah, definitely not that interesting regardless. And yeah, Granlund, weird trade, right? Because not only did Pittsburgh take on this big contract, they also gave up a 2023 second round pick to do so. That's a good draft. Second is pretty early. I don't know why.
Yeah, no one really knows what the Islanders are doing.
No, Penguins.
Oh, sorry. No one really knows what the Penguins are doing. Like, they're at the stage where they're like the fan base and the people I follow who follow the intelligent voices that they're the ones I consider intelligent following the Penguins are like, we need to get rid of this GM before he does damage beyond what he's already done, like before the impact is felt later into the future. And then like, boom, trading picks for a bad Mikael Granlund contract, solving no problems. It's the same thing in Vancouver, right? So now it's like too late. Now, like the next year or two, I mean, this is the end of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang's. Like you want to be competitive. Anyway, it's a bummer. Sorry to Penguins fans. I hope things go better than it looks like they're about to.
All right, Brian. So we still have, I think we're done with the trades pretty much. We still have some streaks I wanted to get to end the show here, including a check-in on Timo Meier, who's playing his first game today for the Devils. So we'll get to him and a few other guys in just a sec, where we're going to wrap this baby up. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Okay, Brian, we are back. Woo! This has been quite the fun yet exhausting episode going through so many trades. And yeah, I wanted to end, like I said, on some updates on some players and some streaks here. Yeah, let's go to New Jersey now. Or I guess, actually, let's go to Arizona, where, believe it or not, the Devils and the Coyotes are tied 4-4. The Devils were up 3-2. The Devils were up 3-1, but yeah, the Coyotes have come back to tie. Jack McBain just scored the tying goal with 2 minutes to go. By the way, Juuso Välimäki, 2 assists in this game. So there you go.
Worth a look.
And that was not even on the power play. Is it even strength? So I don't know, a bunch of randos getting points here on Arizona. That there was a Nick Schmaltz goal from Keller and Välimäki, but yeah, the other goals, Michelli and Zach Cassian and Jack McBain. So, okay. Anyways, obviously, the player that people are interested in is Timo Meier, who's getting his first look with New Jersey. And what do you know? Meier's having a pretty good start because he scored a goal. He scored the first goal of the game, assisted by Hamilton and Jack Hughes. I guess you could say it's not going that well in that they might lose to Arizona, which would be kind of embarrassing for the team. But yeah, for fantasy, Meier is A-okay. He's playing with Hughes and Bratt, so that's a pretty sweet line. Then you've got Hischier, Mercer, and Tatar playing together on the second line. And so I guess the person who got bumped is like Sharon Govich, is he even playing today? I think Sharon Govich might be scratched from looking at these lines here. So yeah, he's the guy who got the hook. And then on the top power play, Palat is off. It's been Hughes, Bratt, Hischier, and Meier, and Dougie Hamilton, which looks pretty stacked to me. So no fantasy advice here, but yeah, New Jersey looks really stacked. I don't know why they're losing this game. Maybe they're trying to figure some things out. Vanacek not having the best game himself, but I think this is going to be a very scary team for the rest of the season.
Definitely. Yeah, the third line looks good. It's Haula, Palat, and Boqvist. And over the last couple of years, that would have been New Jersey's second line, but of course they're deeper than that now. There's not a whole lot of analysis here, except Sharon Govich is the scratch tonight. Mercer continues on his streak, like if you've got him, congratulations. Like you got a good one who's actually keeping it up and is in a fantastic place to keep producing. We'll see. Like I'm curious to see because Sharangovich, I don't think serves any purpose in the bottom six. So we'll see if there's any kind of rotation between him, Mercer, and Tatar. That's what I'll be watching. If you have either of those guys, of course, Mercer, there's no way he's coming out of the lineup with the way he's playing lately. But yeah, it's going to be fun to watch Timo Meier play games that matter and into the playoffs too. The East is going to be, I mean, it's been talked about ad nauseum, but the first round of the playoffs in the East are going to be incredible. I can't wait.
Yeah, especially if the Sens are there playing the Bruins.
Especially then. Yeah, that could be a quick series, but it'll be fun. Like the lead up to the playoffs, if Ottawa does make it, will be more fun, I think, than the playoffs themselves.
Yeah. I don't know. They have Jacob Chikrin now, but okay. Yeah. So Meier goes to New Jersey, which leaves San Jose with, maybe not as bad as some of these other teams we've talked about. Like you look at the roster in like Nashville and Arizona and Chicago, looks pretty bad. San Jose, not great. Like but one exciting thing is they have called up William Eklund to take the Meier spot, playing with Hurdle and Fabian Zetterlund. So what was it at the start of the year
again?
Other
acquisition from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Well, along with Scott Harrington, who waived and was claimed by Anaheim, I think.
And Andreas Janssen, I think, came.
Yeah.
And Andreas Janssen's been playing on the second line with Couture and Barabanov. So I don't know.
What were you wondering? To me. I interrupted you. You were going to say, what were the lines?
Well, what was it? It was Hurdle, Meier, and someone else to start the year, and now I'm kind of blanking on who it was.
Oh my gosh!
Was it
Me
like
too.
LeBanc? Well, whatever. All right,
I tried to roster the guy a couple times. It wasn't LeBanc.
You could look it up while you do that. I'm just going to mention that William Eklund is up the 7th overall pick in 2021. Great first game in terms of his stat line.
It was LeBanc.
Okay. Woo. Did it. 8-3. San Jose lost to Washington, as we mentioned a couple hours ago. But yeah, Eklund did pick up an assist, took 4 shots, top power play. So I'm interested. If he's available, I'd take a look at William Eklund if you could fit him into your lineups next week. He's a high pedigree guy, and it looks like San Jose is going to give him all the opportunities in the world. And so, outside of Hurdle and Couture, I take Eklund over Barabanov at this point as my number 3 forward on the team that I'd be interested in for as long as he's here.
Yeah, for whatever that's worth, right? But like I'd prefer him to Engvall or Granlund or Kapanen. Elon, here's a question. How would you feel about Eklund versus Vrana? Because you sounded pretty optimistic about Vrana in St. Louis.
Brian, look, I'm the host of the show. I just bringing up topics here. I'm not. All I was saying is there a chance? Like I just said, St. Louis paid for him, so maybe they'll give him an opportunity.
Okay, but who would you choose?
Eklund. No, easily Eklund.
Okay, all right.
Vrana's gonna have to show me something.
Okay, cool.
Vrana to me is like a maybe he could get in the top 6. Maybe Eklund is like top line, top power play, high pedigree prospect. Yeah, for sure. And 4 shots was a fantastic re-debut. Well, actually, no, it was a debut this season because he's only spent time in the press box for the time that he's officially been with the big club this year, and playing a lot on that top. Like he's playing with the team's best center in Tomas Hurdle at 5-on-5, and he's playing with what is a legit, like you look at the top power play unit, the Sharks still have that, right? Couture, Hurdle, Erik Karlsson, Barabanov like gets a little dicey, but I still think he probably is a top power play capable player. So you add Eklund to the mix. It's a good place to be. Eklund has had success in the AHL too this year, 41 points in 52 games. I guess the only thing to be careful of is if the Sharks send him down before he plays 9 games. So if you add him, might just be like a hello for a week or two, help me out, and then we'll see you next year. Yeah. So of course the plan is for Eklund to be something in the future, not this year, but for now, while he's here, I would be interested. Let's go to Florida, where finally Barkov and Bennett back in the lineup, and it went pretty well. Florida beat Pittsburgh 4-1 on Saturday. Brian, I mentioned all those teams tied with Ottawa, chasing for that final playoff spot. Florida is one of them. So it's definitely, it's not going to be easy to make it, because when Florida's fully healthy, this is a scary team. We saw what they could do last year. Sure, they've lost Huberdeau, but they've gained Matthew Tkachuk, and they're a scary team. The lines in the last game were Barkov with Duclair and Eetu Luosterainen, and then Reinhart playing on a line with Lomberg and Lundell, and then Sam Bennett playing with Verhaeghe and Matthew Tkachuk. So kind of spreading out the offense here. Sam Reinhart kind of looking like he's getting the short end of the stick. The Lundell is good. Lundell was on the top line, if you recall, with Barkov for a while. We hypothesized that maybe he could fall at some point when Duclair comes back. So as of, it was a good game. So probably this will last for a little bit longer. Looks like, Lundell probably loses his value. Looking at Duclair, someone who people drafted and like stashed, and we're excited to see what they could get out of him. He got points in his first 2 games with the Panthers, nothing in his last couple of games, and he hasn't been on the top power play. So I feel like Duclair is like meh. Like if he's out there, I'll be like maybe grab him, but not someone I'm like so crazy excited for. I like the shots, but I like him playing with Barkov, but I'd prefer if he was a power play guy. Maybe, Brian, I'd be curious to know, who would you take between Duclair and the red hot Eetu Luosterainen, who, like I said, is also playing on the same line with Duclair and Barkov. And why not 6 points in his last 5 games for Luosterainen? He's on a hot streak right now, getting rewarded with a top line spot. This is no Pierre Engvall situation. This is someone on the top line and doing well with it.
I don't know if you remember, but I did bring him up last week and saying he's done a great job spotting for Barkov while he's out. And we'll see what happens when Barkov's back, and he might not be valuable anymore. But yeah, he stayed on the top line with Alex Barkov. Lundell Eland, you said like forget about, but he is still playing with Sam Reinhart. Like the Panthers are like, the other line is Kachuk, Verhaeghe, Bennett. So that definitely seems like the Reinhart, Lomberg, Lundell line definitely seems third in stature compared to those, but they all saw like reasonably even 5-on-5 minutes in the last game against Pittsburgh on Saturday night. So maybe Florida tries to roll a bit of a top 9. But yeah, I love Eetu Luosterainen and that he continues to produce. He's had some bigger shot games. He's getting more minutes. He's getting better deployment, I should say. He's not necessarily getting more minutes. So while he's on the top line, I would have him up there with your Anton Lundells and your Anthony Duclairs, and I might have him at the top of the pile right now just because he is the one who's producing.
Yeah, I could take that. Then another guy who's currently on a top line and looking pretty good is Jack Quinn over on Buffalo. I saw some tweet today that got me a little concerned, but I probably shouldn't be. But like Greenway was traded to Buffalo, and I think it was the GM or the coach, someone was saying that like Greenway is going to get a shot, like potentially in the top 6. So I do wonder. And he was like comparing Greenway to Alex Tuck and saying like they play similarly. So I wonder if maybe Greenway gets a chance to play with Thompson and Skinner. But for now, anyways, it's been Jack Quinn on that line since Alex Tuck got injured, and Jack Quinn is doing really, really well. He has 5 points in his last 4 games. So I'm definitely interested in him more than Luosterainen, I'll say, for as long as he's playing with Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner.
Okay, yeah, I'll join you on that. Quinn's, he's 4 goals on 14 shots on this run, but 3 assists to go with them in his last 7 games. So it's a nice, tidy piece of business for Jack Quinn, who's holding his own up there. And yeah, you mentioned Jordan Greenway. I don't know that I'm too concerned about it, especially while Quinn is producing from the top line. I'm not sure why Buffalo would choose to mess with that.
Well, it's not only about that. They got to win these games, right? They did beat Tampa, but they got destroyed by Boston. I guess everyone gets destroyed by Boston. Maybe you don't have to change anything up based on that. Yeah, but like loss. If
you're losing, but you had one line, maybe you spread out the line. Is that what you're suggesting? Like you have a line succeed and you lose the game. Do you blow up that one successful line?
I'm not the coach, right? I'm just saying a quote that I read that got me a little concerned.
I'm just the host. I'm not the coach. Just deflecting responsibility everywhere.
Well, yeah, my job is not to get takes.
No, I love exactly what you do.
Okay, I appreciate that. Remember, by the way, when Jack Quinn was taken ahead of Marco Rossi and everyone was like, you idiots. Why are you so terrible? And like it was piling on to Buffalo for this terrible pick. Right now, I don't know, Jack Quinn looking pretty good. Marco Rossi still not in the NHL.
So, Rossi's development, I think, was totally derailed by the full season. He was like sick with COVID, and who knows if he's fully recovered. So I don't think anyone saw that coming. He seemed to be one of the more NHL ready prospects in that draft. And I mean, I have to think that's had something to do, but yes, a lot of folks were really down on Quinn, saying like, even in the top 10, he probably did not have business being there. But yes, good for you. Do you have him in a dynasty league?
No,
Elon?
I wish. I probably could have gotten him for cheap after the draft. Blew it. Okay, let's end in Winnipeg. Okay, we had a question from Jeeves asking what to do with Nikolai Ehlers, like Jeepers Creepers, Brian. Like once again, Ehlers finds himself off the top power play. And this is with Pierre-Luc Dubois injured. And yet still, Nino Niederreiter has bumped Ehlers. So the top power play in the last game was Wheeler, Niederreiter, Scheifele, Connor, Morrissey. I guess you can also say Wheeler, someone who bumped Ehlers, because for a while Wheeler was on the second power play, but Ehlers back in his comfortable spot on PP2, but not in his comfortable spot of getting points, because for the first time in a long time in his career, Ehlers is pointless in 5 games, not even taking that many shots. He's playing at even strength with Kevin Stenlund and Blake Wheeler, while Nino is playing with Scheifele and Kyle Connor. So, looking very short term right now, just looking at the deployment, but also the results. Nino Niederreiter, 6 points in his last 6 games. He's looked really good so far on Winnipeg. Is it crazy to say that? Well, I'll just ask the question. I'm not saying I'm saying it, but would you swap out Ehlers for Niederreiter for the rest of this season? Let's say your playoffs start next week. There's only 3 weeks left.
I wouldn't.
You don't take the top line, top power play guy?
No, because if one guy's going to save me, like if I need someone, it's going to be Ehlers, and maybe he'll let me down. It won't be like, it's very concerning that he has played a combined 23 minutes, so averaging less than 12 minutes a night over his last 2 games. That's concerning for me with Nick Ehlers. But I can't. The upside is just too high. Here's an alternate.
I don't disagree with you.
But I'm trying to entertain the idea. If I have Ehlers and Nino Niederreiter both on my roster and it's full on a given night, and I need to bench one of them, and it comes down to Ehlers or Niederreiter, maybe I play Niederreiter ahead of Ehlers. I still don't know that I'd have the nerve to do that, because I think Ehlers is going to come back and be himself at some point. It's just a matter of waiting for him. But I don't know. It stinks. I don't know what to say. We've been down this road so often with Ehlers. We thought the second power play days were behind him, and here we are. And beyond that, his 5-on-5 deployment stinks.
Yeah. Well, so what do we do? It would
help if Pierre-Luc Dubois got healthy for one thing at 5-on-5, but generally it's just unimpressive. It's unbecoming.
Yeah, but okay. So I had some fun here, comparing Nino to Ehlers, but we do have a person, Jeeves, here asking for your help and say, what do I do with this guy? But you're saying you're holding on to Ehlers and just going down with the ship. Yeah. You could drop him. You drop him. You
could drop him for Nino. Yeah. I'm not dropping him for
maybe
Nino.
Not for Nino, but yeah, maybe for someone.
Spot. Yeah. Let us know, Jeeves, who else is out there in free agency.
Any reason to expect, so basically you're just saying he's cold right now. His deployment isn't great, but you still have faith that he can kind of bounce back, or is that kind of it?
The reason
you're not seeing anything in his game that indicates that he should be doing better.
I don't even think there's been the opportunity. He's been taken off the second power play and he's playing 11 minutes a night. It doesn't matter what I see in his numbers for that. It's just whether he's himself or not, it's trash. Maybe he's getting it because he's not. And it's been too short a time for me to really know. If anybody in Winnipeg, watching the team, who's had their eyes on Ehlers more often, let us know. We'll share via Twitter at Keeping Karlsson if we find anything. But I have no theories here,
Fair.
Unfortunately.
All right. Well, here's what I'll say. Here's my advice. Winnipeg plays Monday, Wednesday to start next week. That Monday game is against San Jose. That's a tasty opponent. That's a nice opportunity to get some points. Definitely don't drop Ehlers for that game. Might as well hold for the Wednesday. Then they don't play again until Saturday, Sunday. So if you're desperate and he still does nothing in those 2 games and is still getting low minutes, maybe then you have to consider doing it. But Brian might disagree, but times get tough when it's the playoffs. You got to make these tough calls, and sometimes
if it's a life or death call for your fantasy hockey team, you might have to.
Yeah. All right, Brian, we've done it. We've gone through everything we had planned. I thought maybe we would need 3 hours for it, but we did it in just over 2. So look at us. Hope everyone enjoyed this show. We put a lot of work into it, and we hope that it was worth, your while, right? Our while. It's worth our while if it's worth your while. So let us know what you thought. We'd love to hear from you. If you're on our Discord, let us know what you think. If you're on Twitter, tweet us at Keeping Karlsson. Also, if you disagree with any takes, you want to have any discussions about it, we're there. We love talking fantasy hockey. That's what we do. So yeah, at Twitter, at Keeping Karlsson. If you want to become a patron, join our community. It's not too late. $5 a month. Sign up now. Hang out for a month. We can help you out. Us and the patrons will hang out during your fantasy playoffs. You can ask us some questions and join the fun convos. I love the community. Thanks so much to the patrons who have stuck with us all through the season. You're the best. For more info, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, I'm done here. So let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right, this episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and has been powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Ricard, Rob, David, Derek, Ryan, Tom, Andrea, Ivan, Tyler, Aaron, Adam, and of course, Patty. Thank you to Kevin A. Bear and our team of Cupful co-commissions, keeping the Cupful active and running smoothly. Everyone, we're like, everyone's still setting their lineups. All right, there's play, and you should do the same. But most, like, well over, I'd say over 95%, over 90. Okay, let's just leave that out then if you're gonna quibble with it.
Well, I just don't want to say that there's people listening like, not this guy in my league.
Well, it might be one per div.
Well, okay, that's not good.
What's that?
I'm not going to brag. I don't think we should brag that everyone's setting their lineups when there's one per div. That's not.
That's like 93%.
Well, you said anyways, whatever. Just don't say
okay,
that.
I'm going to start over.
Okay.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Ricard, Rob, David, Derek, Ryan, Tom, Andrea, Ivan, Tyler, Aaron, Adam, and of course, Patty. Thank you to our team of Cupful coordinators and co-commissioners, Kevin A. Bear leading the charge, kkupfl.com if you want to learn more about our fantasy hockey league that we run. It's going great. So we head towards the playoffs. A lot of leagues totally up in the air. We have a whole bunch where several, like more than half the playoff spots are going to come down to the final week of play. Speaks to the level of parity and competition in our leagues, like the good kind of parity, not the NHL's parity. There is one division though that had like all their 6 playoff spots determined last week or the week before. So congrats to everybody living that cozy, comfy in the playoffs life in the Cupful, and everybody else heading towards your playoffs. Good luck. Thank you to Elon and Shams, Ben and Moore, for all the amazing work going over at gamedaytweets.com. Get all your lines, your news, your goalies, now your stats over there. It's easily the best fantasy. Like, you got your frozen tools and you got your game day tweets. That's it for me. And of course, all the great content on Dobber Hockey. Thank you to our short shifts hosts, Lewis and Shams and Jeremy. Logo art by BrandonWeave.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and Yahoo.
Great job, Brian. This was so much fun. Hope everyone enjoyed it. We've got a couple short shifts episodes coming up this week, so definitely make sure you're subscribed. And until then, Brian, we're going to chat in a week. How should I pass my time while I wait for that momentous occasion?
Well, productively and meaningfully, I hope. And one way you can make it meaningful is by doing all you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Awesome. Great stuff. I had a lot of fun. Thanks everyone for joining us. That was great.
Yeah. Thanks everyone in the chat and watching this after the fact.
Yeah. Thanks all. All right.
Everybody.
So
one and all.
I'm saving my file here.
Me too.
Yeah. See you later.
File. Okay.
Bye.